Chapter 180. After his hands turned into dragon claws, it was much more convenient than using tools. Yang Tian's claws could easily insert into the wall of the cave, allowing him to quickly descend along the wall. After more than a minute, Yang Tian finally reached the bottom of the cave after descending more than 100 meters. Yang Tian shone the flashlight down and found that he had come to a huge space. The top of this space was a solitary shape with many holes 3 meters in diameter. Yang Tian came down from one of the holes. The temperature in the cave was much lower than outside, and the air was very humid. The only uncomfortable thing was that there was a strong fishy smell in the air. This space was very large. Yang Tian couldn't see the end of this underground space with the light of the flashlight. Those insects just now must have come out from these holes. If this is an insect nest, then it will be troublesome. Yang Tian looked at the top of the space again, and said that the holes were like a beehive. Rumble, at this moment, the ground under Yang Tian's feet moved. This movement was not a vibration but a kind of horizontal movement. Yang Tian could clearly feel it. Under his feet. Yang Tian immediately shone the flashlight hole under his feet. Under his feet there was moist red sand, but it looked very thin, and the distribution was not very uniform. Yang Tian pulled out the knife from his waist and scratched the ground. A wisp of white flashed in front of Yang Tian's eyes, and then it was covered by the scattered sand. There seemed to be something on the ground under his feet. Yang Tian's eyes widened, and he immediately squatted down, put the knife in his hand flat, and scraped the ground with the knife. The red sand on the surface was scraped away, revealing a white, eggshell-like thing. Yang Tian was curious and used the knife to scratch the eggshell-like skin again. Poof! Suddenly, the white hard shell broke open, and a white fleshy tentacle rushed out from inside, rolling toward Yang Tian like lightning. Yang Tian chopped off the white fleshy feelers that were as thick as an arm. These fleshy tentacles were soft, just like the tentacles of an octopus, but there were no suckers on them. That knife made Yang Tian realize that this fleshy feeler was extremely tough. Even if an ordinary person held such a sharp knife in his hand, they would not be able to cut off this fleshy feeler. Creak, creak! At this moment, the little blue dragon cried out excitedly. Then, something that surprised Yang Tian happened. The little blue dragon actually grew bigger, grabbed the tentacle, and swallowed it into its stomach. Can this thing be eaten? Yang Tian's eyes widened as he watched the little blue dragon devour the tentacle with an intoxicated expression. Xiaolong, what is this thing? Yang Tian curiously asked. Creak, creak! Little blue dragon shouted and explained to Yang Tian. Goblin. The little blue dragon told Yang Tian that this thing was a goblin. It also told Yang Tian that it was because of the sudden awakening of the inherited memory that he knew this. In the little blue dragon's explanation, goblins existed in the universe, a half-animal, half-plant thing. Goblins grew very, very big. The small ones were only the size of a finger, and the big ones were enough to swallow a planet. The word goblin, in Yang Tian's impression, was like a creature in a Western fantasy novel. It was very smart and looked like a short, intelligent life form. He did not expect that the goblin that the little blue dragon mentioned was such a thing. Yang Tian squatted down curiously again and scraped off all the red sand under his feet with his knife. Soon, a huge egg appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes. This egg was like a large egg, oval in shape, and the longest part was more than 20 meters. Only then did Yang Tian know that he had actually stepped on something like this after coming down from the cave. Crack! Poof! At this moment, there was a burst of dense cracking sounds in this large underground cave. Some thick white inner tentacles stretched out from the ground and burrowed directly into the cave above. Only then did Yang Tian understand that the large bugs on the ground were all the tentacles of the gnome that was underground. After these tentacles stretched out from the ground, they hid in the sand. Once a living creature passed by, it would be preyed on by these tentacles and become the food of this huge goblin. Predation was generally the way of survival for animals. Plants, on the other hand, took root in the ground and used their roots to absorb the nutrients in the ground. In that case, this half-plant, half-animal goblin must still have root. Goblins were creatures without intelligence, and they all relied on instinct to survive. Yang Tian's arrival had only triggered a portion of the goblin's nerves, causing it to have a conditioned offensive reflex. Squeak, squeak, squeak. While Yang Tian was in a daze, the little blue dragon cried out again. It told Yang Tian that it wanted to devour this goblin. Yang Tian nodded. Of course, he would not object. Roar! In this huge space, the little azure dragon suddenly transformed again and let out a howl. Yang Tian immediately returned to where he came from. Rumble! When Yang Tian climbed out of the ground began to shake as if there was an earthquake. Bang! Suddenly, there was a loud noise. The huge little blue dragon, a huge dragon head, suddenly drilled out of the ground. Yang Tian immediately carried his backpack and dodged. The little azure dragon had already become incomparably huge. A single dragon head was as big as a house. When it drilled out of the ground, it squeezed the surrounding ground until it arched up. Roar! After drilled out of the ground, the little blue dragon howled again, its eyes wide open. Bang! There was another loud noise. Half of the little blue dragon's body had already rushed out of the ground. Its two claws were constantly scratching the ground. Behind it, it was as if something huge was slowly being pulled out of the ground by its two back claws. Rumble! As the little blue dragon exerted its strength, the ground shook, and the rock layers within a radius of 1,000 meters turned over and arched into a small mountain. At this time, suddenly, hundreds of huge white tentacles emerged from the ground and wrapped around the little blue dragon's body. Then, they instantly straightened and dragged the little blue dragon underground. The little blue dragon did not panic. It turned its head, opened its mouth, and bit on one of the white fleshy tentacles, swallowing a large mouthful of white meat into its stomach. The fleshy tentacle that was bitten by the little blue dragon shrank back at once. The little blue dragon bit a few more times. More than a dozen thick white fleshy tentacles were hurt and shrank back one after another. Roar! The little blue dragon roared, lowered its head, and slammed its two thick front claws on the ground again. Boom! There was a loud noise. The front half of the little blue dragon's body suddenly straightened up. Seeing this situation, Yang Tian clenched his fists nervously. He was looking forward to seeing what the goblin that was pulled out by the little blue dragon looked like. Chapter 181. Rumble! With the efforts of the little blue dragon, after half an hour, there was a loud noise and a large number of rocks at the edge of the pit surged up. The huge goblin underground was finally pulled out by the little blue dragon, revealing its overall shape. This was an oval-shaped giant with a diameter of 1,000 meters. Its color was white with a tinge of yellow, and its surface was covered with oval-shaped protrusions. These protrusions were what Yang Tian was stepping on when he was in the underground cave. On the surface of this giant, there were many white fleshy tentacles that were constantly wriggling. They were thick and thin, just like the hair of this goblin. It was these fleshy tentacles that rushed out of the ground and turned into the shape of insects to attack Yang Tian who passed by. This method was similar to the man-eating flowers on Earth. Around the body of this goblin, near the bottom, there were 18 thick white fleshy tentacles. These fleshy tentacles were the ones that wrapped around the little blue dragon before. After being bitten a few times by the little blue dragon, they retracted. Under the abdomen of this goblin, there were dense and entangled thick white root. The little blue dragon's two thick hind claws were deeply embedded in the surface of this giant goblin. After it pulled the goblin out of the ground, these roots were still connected to the ground. At this time, these thick roots were straightened. The goblin obviously didn't want to be eaten by the little blue dragon and made a final struggle. The 18 thick white fleshy tentacles distributed around its body suddenly lengthened and once again wrapped around the little blue dragon. These fleshy tentacles were like snake. Circle after circle, They tightly bound the little blue dragon, getting tighter and tighter. The little blue dragon's neck was wrapped by these fleshy tentacles. It was very difficult for it to even turn its head. Naturally, it couldn't bite these white fleshy tentacles like before. Seeing this situation, Yang Tian knew it was time for him to make a move. A large amount of the power of the Dragon Ball retreated from Yang Tian's hands. They were no longer a pair of dragon claws. He put down his backpack and jumped on a raised rock. His body shot out and he immediately unsheathed his sword. Poof, poof, Yang Tian's body passed through the gnome's dense roots. With 2 slashes, he severed a white root with a diameter of 2 meters. This was the thickest root of the gnome's root system. After cutting this root, the white fleshy tentacles wrapped around the little blue dragon loosened a lot. The little blue dragon shook its body, and the fleshy tentacles wrapped around its body were shaken off. The little blue dragon exerted force again. Kakik, bung. Dense cracking sounds were heard, followed by a loud bang. The densely packed roots of the goblins were all pulled out by the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon's powerful strength shocked even Yang Tian. Previously, even Yang Tian hadn't noticed it. The little blue dragon finally dragged the huge goblin to the ground. After losing contact with the ground, the fleshy tentacles on the surface of the goblin softened and became motionless, turning into a dead object. At the same time, the goblin's huge body also began to shrink, like a deflated ball, instantly shrinking to half its original size. Next, the little blue dragon couldn't wait to turn its body, open its mouth, and bite the goblin. It tore off a large piece and began to devour it. It didn't even mind the large amount of sand on it. Yang Tian, on the other hand, followed the pit and reached the pit that was hundreds of meters deep. Many of the goblin's root systems were still left in this pit. After these roots lost contact with the main body, they all withered, their surface wrinkled, and they lost their vitality. However, the thickest root in the middle of this pit was still alive. Not only was this root alive, but it was also moving. Yang Tian curiously walked around this root. Was there anything else down there? Yang Tian looked at this root, pinched his chin, and thought. Poof, poof, poof. Outside the pit, the sound of the little blue dragons tearing could be heard continuously. Yang Tian estimated that the little blue dragon wouldn't be able to finish such a big thing in a short period of time, so he decided to dig out this root to take a look. In Yang Tian's consciousness, there would always be something special under the treasures of heaven and earth. This was also in line with the rules. Those that could be called treasures of heaven and earth were all good things and very rare. They were produced because of special environment. This goblin was a treasure of heaven and earth to the little blue dragon. To be able to make the goblin grow so big, it must have required sufficient nourishment. Furthermore, the soil in this area was not fertile, and there would not be many beasts passing through here. So, what was it that allowed this goblin to grow to such a size? There was no need to guess the reason. Yang Tian sheathed the saber in his hand, hugged the root with both hands, and pulled it out forcefully. The soil here was much more moist than the surface, and the surface of this 2-meter-thick root was extremely smooth. Yang Tian pulled it out forcefully and gradually pulled it out. In fact, after this root left the body, it would soon die, but because it was connected to something below, it still had a certain amount of vitality and was making its final dying struggle. Poof! Suddenly, as if the cork in a bottle had been pulled out, with a soft sound, the entire root was pulled out by Yang Tian. This root was different from what Yang Tian had imagined. Although it was more than 20 meters long, the end of the root was not pointed, but an oval, densely covered with suction cup-like things. This was similar to the result of Yang Tian's guess. There must be something below. After putting down the root, Yang Tian picked up the flashlight and shone it into the hole where the root was pulled out. Suddenly, a blue light flashed in this pit about 2 meters in diameter. This blue light was obviously formed by the reflection of the flashlight. There must be something blue below. Yang Tian immediately held the flashlight in his mouth, and used both his hands and feet to push down the wall of the pit. Soon, he reached the bottom of more than 20 meters. Yang Tian shone the flashlight under his feet and found that there were blue crystal-like objects under his feet, just like blue crystals. This thing was very big. Yang Tian pulled out the dagger at his waist and cleaned the red sand on the surface of this blue crystal. Yang Tian originally thought that this blue crystal was not big, but when he dug up the red sand, he found that this blue crystal was very big, and this pit was only a part of it. Yang Tian used the dagger to chisel this blue crystal. A small piece of blue crystal was dug out by Yang Tian. It was about the size of a finger. Yang Tian found out that this thing was actually not hard. Instead, it was flexible and not as brittle as stone. Yang Tian picked up this small piece and placed it on the palm of his hand and carefully observed it. Under the illumination of the flashlight, this small piece of blue crystal emitted a charming blue light. While Yang Tian was looking at it curiously, something miraculous happened. The small piece of blue crystal quickly melted and turned into a liquid blue substance. Yang Tian guessed that this change was because of the temperature in his hand. Once this thing came into contact with the temperature of the palm of his hand, it would melt. But soon, Yang Tian rejected this judgment. Because after this blue liquid melted, it began to seep into his palm and turned into energy. And the power of the dragon orb in his body began to automatically absorb this energy. This blue crystal was actually a pure energy substance. Yang Tian could not help but remember what Yang Nancy told him. The strong people in the universe also needed to absorb energy when they cultivated. Many people absorbed some natural mineral energy, and some races relied on eating other creatures to replenish their energy to evolve. Is this blue crystal also a mineral energy? Yang Tian thought curiously. Soon, the small piece of blue crystal in Yang Tian's hand was completely absorbed by the power of the Yang Tian dragon orb. During this process, Yang Tian did not use his thoughts to interfere, but let nature take its course. Chapter 182. When this small piece of blue crystal was completely absorbed, Yang Tian quietly sensed it. The power of the Dragon Ball flowing in his body had indeed strengthened a bit. This made Yang Tian happy. He felt that his luck was too good. If he could absorb this large piece of blue crystal, how powerful would his power be? But how could he move such a large piece of blue crystal out? Soon, Yang Tian began to feel distressed. It was like a person who discovered a mountain of gold but had no way of taking it away. Could it be that he had to stay here and absorb the energy? Only after he was done would he leave. This idea suddenly popped up in Yang Tian's mind. But soon, he shook his head. This wouldn't do. He had to leave here as soon as possible and find Qin Fei. So much time had passed, and Yang Tian didn't even know how Qin Fei was doing now. If he left this thing here, it wouldn't run away on its own. He could leave it here for the time being. After he found Qin Fei, he would come here again, roar. At this moment, the little blue dragon outside suddenly let out a roar, and the sound resounded through the heavens and earth. The little blue dragon's voice was filled with anger. Yang Tian frowned. His legs kicked hard, and his body shot out of the 2-meter diameter hole. Once outside, Yang Tian discovered that there were many pterosaurs circling in the sky. There were many pterosaurs, tens of thousands of them. They were so densely packed that they covered the light of the stars. Yang Tian immediately came out of the big hole and looked up. The little blue dragon had already devoured more than half of the huge goblin, and there was only a small part left. The pterosaurs in the sky swooped down from time to time. When the little blue dragon wasn't paying attention, they used their long sharp beaks to chisel at the huge goblin, gouging out a piece of goblin and swallowing it into their stomach. It turned out that these pterosaurs wanted to snatch the little blue dragon's food. Of course, the little blue dragon was unwilling. The angry little blue dragon swung its tail and chased away these annoying fellows. It even spat out dragon flames into the sky and burned a large number of pterosaurs to death. The pterosaurs that had been burned to death fell from the sky like rain. Although a large number of their companions had died, these pterosaurs still pounced without fear. To the pterosaur, the temptation of the gnome was too great. There were too many pterosaurs, and the little blue dragon couldn't handle them all. Xiao Long, ignore them. Seeing the little blue dragon's appearance, Yang Tian became anxious. If this was the case, the little blue dragon was simply wasting time. There were simply too many pterosaurs. Furthermore, there were still a large number of them flying over from afar. Yang Tian immediately shouted a reminder. Only then did the little blue dragon wake up. It opened its mouth and continued to eat the gnome's meat. This couldn't be helped. There were simply too many pterosaurs. After killing one, 2 more would come. In the end, the gnomes would probably be eaten up by these pterosaurs. The little blue dragon was also very smart. After being reminded by Yang Tian, it understood that it had lost its mind due to anger. Yang Tian watched curiously from the side. Yang Tian wasn't afraid of the large number of carnivorous pterosaurs in the sky. These pterosaurs placed all their attention on the gnomes and were busy fighting with the little blue dragon. How could they care about Yang Tian? More than an hour later, the little blue dragon finally ate up all the gnomes. Most of the pterosaurs in the sky flew away in satisfaction, leaving behind a small number of greedy pterosaurs that were still circling in the sky. Roar! The little blue dragon roared angrily, flew into the sky, and began to hunt down the pterosaurs that hadn't left. Just now, the little blue dragon was filled with anger. Now that the gnomes had finished eating, it was just the right time to vent its anger on these pterosaurs. The little blue dragon showed its might. The remaining pterosaurs couldn't defeat the little blue dragon and could only be forced to leave. Soon, the sky became quiet. After venting its anger, the little blue dragon landed on the ground. Its body quickly shrank as if it had been deflated. Soon, it became a mini dragon. After a few hops, the little blue dragon came in front of Yang Tian and jumped onto Yang Tian's shoulder. Xiao Long, there's another thing down there. Go and see what it is. As Yang Tian spoke, he once again entered the hole that was about 2 meters in diameter. Squeak, squeak! When the little blue dragon saw this blue crystal, it let out an excited cry. It excitedly told Yang Tian that this was an ore of pure energy. It contained a large amount of pure energy that could be absorbed by living things. In other words, this blue crystal was actually the same as the beast core. It was a type of energy substance that could be used to directly train. Yang Tian knew that his guess was correct. This was something that could be used to train. At this moment, he suddenly remembered that Yang Nancy had told him about something called the stellar crystal. Could this blue crystal be the stellar crystal? Yang Tian thought about it, but he couldn't be sure. This thing seemed to be a bit big. He couldn't take it all away. Yang Tian took out his dagger and continuously dug at the surface. Soon, he dug out a large pile of blue crystal granules. Yang Tian used his backpack to store these things. Then, he flooded the hole. This place was remote and the environment was very bad. Very few people would pass by here. This hole would soon be covered by the red sand blown by the wind. No one would be able to tell that there was a giant goblin here. After exiting the cave, Yang Tian carried his backpack that had become much heavier. His heart was filled with regret, thinking that it would be great if he had a storage space. No matter how many items there were, he would be able to dig them all out and store them in his storage space. In the outer space of vast Martial planet, tens of thousands of large ships slowly arrived. One of the large purple ships was very eye-catching. It was like a huge purple pyramid. This ship was the command ship of the Purple Star Empire's current emperor, Purple Star Empire. There was also a huge palace inside. This huge pyramid-shaped ship could house millions of people. Escorting the spaceship were thousands of motherships and thousands of other large warships. Although it was the Purple Qin Empire that came to propose marriage, the Blue Qin Empire still acted as if they were facing a great enemy. They sent out tens of thousands of battleships to block this large fleet to prevent the Purple Qin Empire from attacking the Blue Qin Empire's capital planet. This kind of thing had happened before in the universe's countless years of history. In the magnificent palace of the Purple Star Empire's pyramid-shaped ship, the current emperor of the Purple Star Empire, was sitting on his high throne. The seats below were filled with the Purple Star Empire's royal family and the Empire's experts. This time, the Purple Star Empire's marriage proposal ceremony was giving face to the fourth prince. Not only did the Emperor come personally, but he also sent many of the Empire's experts to accompany him. Purple Star Empire's personal visit was not purely to give face to the fourth prince. He also had an important matter to discuss with the Blue Star Empire's Emperor, Lan Jing. The marriage proposal ceremony was not completed yet, but some of the people below were already congratulating Zi Shu. Although the fourth prince was not the Emperor's personal successor, he had a lot of power in the Purple Star Empire. When Purple Star Empire reaches the end of his life, he would have a chance to use his own strength to become the Emperor of the Purple Star Empire. Zi Shu had a smile on her face and her eyes were filled with excitement. There were hundreds of people here. Most of them were experts of the Purple Star Empire. Most of them were serious and calm. They did not care about Zi Shu at all. "Uncle, what should I do? The Purple Star Empire's people are here." In Qin Fei's room, Qin Fei said to the middle-aged man worriedly. "Don't worry." The middle-aged man waved his hand and said confidently, "When the time comes, I will make Purple Star Empire lose a lot of face." Humph! The middle-aged man snorted after saying that. It seems like the uncle has a grudge with the Emperor of the Purple Star Empire, Qin Fei thought. Chapter 183. The Purple Star Empire's battleship stopped in the outer space of the vast Martial planet. Emperor Zi Chenyuxing brought a group of people and boarded a small ship. Under the escort of the Blue Star Empire's 18 ceremonial ships, they landed on the vast Martial planet. The Blue Star Empire's Emperor, Lan Jing, personally welcomed them. The two emperors walked side by side into the Blue Star Empire's guest hall. In the hall, the two emperors sat side by side on high seat. Below them, the nobles of the two empires sat facing each other. After Lan Jing and Zi Chenyuxing spoke for a while, Zi Chenyuxing felt that the time was right and said, "My fourth brother is very fond of your empire's eldest princess, Lan Qian. This time, he is willing to use a habitable planet as a betrothal gift to ask for your empire's eldest princess hand in marriage." When the two emperors were speaking, the people below didn't say anything. When Zi Chenyuxing finished speaking, the hall became even quieter. All the guests looked up at Lan Jing, as if they were eager to know the answer. In fact, they already knew the answer. If Lan Jing didn't agree, Zi Chenyuxing wouldn't have appeared here. Lan Jing smiled. This matter couldn't be better. Our two empires are already in-laws. This can be considered an even closer relationship. After Lan Jing finished speaking, the guests of the two empires stood up and congratulated her. The reason why they were so orderly was because this was part of the etiquette. Most of the guests were nobles. This had become a conditioned reflex. Since Lan Jing agreed, the next step was the procedure. The Purple Star Empire's fourth prince, Zi Qinshu, immediately stood up and took out a document from a tray held by a servant. This document was the transfer agreement of a habitable planet. Zi Chenyuxing had already signed it before coming here. As long as Lan Jing signed it, this planet transfer agreement would take effect immediately. At the intersection of the Purple Star Empire and Blue Star Empire's star map, a habitable planet that originally belonged to the Purple Star Empire would be transferred to the Blue Star Empire's star map. Using a princess in exchange for a habitable planet, to the Blue Star Empire, this was a very good deal. Fourth Prince Zi Shu smiled as he held the scroll and walked to the center of the hall. Although the fourth prince had a smile on his face, he was actually a little annoyed. Not long ago, he had sent out a team of 10,000 people, but not a single person had returned alive. The spaceship that had gone to receive them had returned with a message that the teleportation formation to the exile planet called Earth had been shut down. Zishu didn't know how to answer to her father after losing more than 10,000 warriors, especially a star king who was at the peak of the meteor star level. He reckoned that when Zichen found out, he, the fourth prince, would definitely be scolded again. Although 10,000 soldiers are nothing to the Zichen Empire. However, to the fourth prince, Zishu, this was not a small loss because every prince's guards were personally assigned by the monarch, Zichen. Now that they had lost 10,000 men, it would be very troublesome to get another 10,000 men back. That Yang Tian must still be alive, but what was the use of that? Soon, the eldest princess would be his woman. The fourth prince held the planet transfer agreement in his hands and was distressed for a while before thinking proudly. Lan Jing looked at the planet transfer agreement in Zichenshu's hands and couldn't help but smile. To her, exchanging a daughter for a habitable planet was a very worthwhile thing. Actually, Lan Jing had high hopes for Qin Fei before, but who told this daughter to be disobedient? A disobedient daughter can only be like this. Uncle, this isn't good, right? At the side door of the hall, Qin Fei looked at the middle-aged man in front of her and said worriedly. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "If you don't do as I say, you will marry that trash of a fourth Prince Zishu. You decide what to do." Qin Fei clenched her teeth and nodded. At this time, Lan Jing gave a look to a maid standing beside her. The maid nodded and walked down the stairs to take the planet transfer agreement from Zichenshu's hands. If Lan Jing accepted this agreement, then no matter what, the eldest princess of the Lanchen Empire would have to marry Zichenshu. Otherwise, the Lanchen Empire would be violating the agreement and the responsibility would be on the Lanchen Empire's side. Although Qin Fei didn't want to marry Zichenshu, she wouldn't let this happen. However, what would happen next would cause the Lanchen Empire to lose face and the consequences would be unpredictable. Even so, when Qin Fei saw the maid walking down the stairs, she still resolutely appeared and shouted, "Wait! Wait!" Qin Fei's clear, melodious, and beautiful voice resounded throughout the entire hall. Then, Qin Fei appeared in front of everyone in a luxurious dress. Before Qin Fei came, she didn't want to dress up, but she couldn't persuade the mysterious middle-aged uncle. She tied up her hair and put on the most beautiful and gorgeous head ornament. She wore a white dress with a jade-like belt around her waist, making her waist look even more slender. She also wore a beautiful silk vest on her shoulders. The current Qin Fei was dazzling and beautiful to the point that it was suffocating. She looked more like a princess than any other princess. When the guests in the hall saw Qin Fei, some of them couldn't help but stand up. Even Zichen, the ruler of a country, couldn't help but be startled when he saw Qin Fei. His eyes flashed with a trace of a burning light. It was Zichen first time seeing such a beautiful woman. Actually, in the Lanchen Empire, there were many beautiful women like Qin Fei. However, they all lost to Qin Fei in terms of temperament. Qin Fei wasn't only beautiful, but more importantly, she had a sacred and pure aura that made people not want to profane her. It was this kind of temperament that made strong men want to conquer her. This was the most fatal point for men. I must have her. Zichenshu swore in his heart when he saw Qin Fei's appearance. As for the other men, many of them looked at Zichenshu with envious gazes. These people didn't seem to hear the three words that Qin Fei just said. Wait! Wait for what? Lan Jing frowned and looked at the maid beside her. This maid was so frightened that she immediately lowered her head. Qin Fei was already grounded. Why would she appear here? After this thought flashed through her mind, Lan Jing didn't think about it anymore. Instead, she focused on how to solve the next problem. She didn't need to guess to know what Qin Fei was going to say next. I don't agree to the marriage with the Lanqin Empire's fourth prince, Zishu. I've already said this before. I'm already married. My man is Yang Tian. Qin Fei stood high up on the stage and spoke with a sonorous and powerful voice. Qin Fei and Yang Tian's personalities were very similar. Sometimes, before something happened, they would be worried and nervous. However, when it came to facing it directly, their hearts would be calm. Good. Not far away, the middle-aged man hiding at the side door couldn't help but smile and give Qin Fei a thumbs up as he praised her. At this moment, a maid came in from the side door in a panic and saw the middle-aged man with a glance. She wanted to shout because it was this middle-aged man who restrained her and allowed the first princess to escape. However, the middle-aged man only glanced at the maid once, and the maid felt as if her head had been hit by a heavy hammer. She felt dizzy and fell to the ground. After dizzying the maid with a glance, this middle-aged man turned his head and watched Qin Fei's performance. The first princess of the Lanqin Empire directly rejected this marriage in front of the Purple Qin Empire's monarch, Zi Chenyexing. This was undoubtedly slapping Zi Chenyexing's face in front of everyone. Although he was stunned by Qin Fei's appearance and temperament, Zi Chenyexing's face suddenly became gloomy. He turned his head and looked at Lan Jing with angry eyes. Chapter 184. Seeing Zi Chenyuxing's angry gaze, Lan Jing knew that if she didn't give Zi Chenyuxing a reasonable explanation or solve the eye problem, the relationship between Purple Sun Empire and Blue Sun Empire would probably fall to the freezing point in history. If she knew this would happen, she wouldn't have paid such a huge price to bring back this disobedient eldest daughter. But it has already happened, what's the use of regretting now? Lan Jing wasn't a woman who would be distressed by regret. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become the ruler of Blue Sun Empire. At this time, Lan Jing thought of Qin Fei's biological father. She thought that if this matter was known by that man, he would definitely come. Countless thoughts flashed through Lan Jing's mind as she slowly stood up. She looked coldly at Qin Fei and said indifferently, "What nonsense are you causing? Being married is just an excuse. Otherwise, why would you still be a virgin?" Since things have already turned out like this, Lan Jing couldn't care less about Qin Fei's face. Hearing her biological mother's words, Qin Fei's face immediately turned red. Back then, she and Yang Tian had completed their wedding but hadn't entered the bridal chamber yet. She was brought here by those bounty hunters of the Jade Sun race. If she had known that something like this would happen, she would have lived with Yang Tian earlier. Qin Fei already knew that when she was in high school, some of her best friends lived with their boyfriend. Sometimes, when there were no boys around, these girls would talk about this topic. Hearing this, Qin Fei's face turned red. She had been taught strictly since childhood. Even kissing is difficult for her, let alone living with Yang Tian. Yang Tian, thinking of Yang Tian, Qin Fei's heart was filled with deep longing. Her eyes were filled with confusion as her thoughts returned to the past. Seeing Qin Fei not speaking, Lan Jing coldly said, "Men, eldest princess is tired and talking nonsense. Bring her back." Yes. 2 guards wearing blue armor appeared and bowed to Lan Jing. Then they quickly walked towards Qin Fei. At this time, everyone in the hall gathered their gazes on Qin Fei. Qin Fei finally woke up from her memories. She frowned and looked at the 2 guards. Guards who could be on duty in front of the Blue Sun Empire's ruler's palace were very powerful. These 2 guards were both generals of the Meteor Star level. Before the 2 guards walked in front of Qin Fei, a powerful aura suddenly erupted from Qin Fei's body. Qin Fei hid her strength very deeply. No one was able to sense that she had a powerful strength. At this time, Qin Fei revealed her strength. Everyone was shocked. The reason for that was because the power Qin Fei had displayed was truly too powerful for someone of her age. They all knew that before Qin Fei was brought back, she was just a powerless ordinary girl. Meteor Star level's ruler. That's right, the Aurus ruler's ants. When Zi Chenyu's Qin's body's ruler's mother's, uses us when she saw this. How wonderful that would be, how wonderful that would be, how wonderful that would be. The two guards were only generals of the meteor star level. They were forced by Qin Fei's aura and were unable to move forward. They couldn't help but retreat a few steps and kneel down together. Qian, what are you doing? Could it be that you want to go against your mother's will? Although Qin Fei had unleashed the aura of a domain lord of the meteorite star domain, which had surprised Lan Jing, she was just a mere domain lord. Lan Jing didn't take her seriously. Lan Jing's words were still filled with an inviolable will. However, Qin Fei shook her head and said indifferently, "Although you're my mother, you don't have the right to interfere with my freedom." Qin Fei was also extremely determined when she said these words. Good. Lan Jing was completely furious. She sneered and said good 3 times. Then, she turned her head and said to Zichenyu, "From now on, Lan Qian is no longer my daughter. Her name is Qin Fei. She's no longer my Blue Sun Empire's princess." Lan Jing's words were very clear. She didn't recognize Qin Fei as her daughter and expelled her from the Blue Sun Empire. To a member of the Empire's imperial family, this was an extremely heavy punishment. Under normal circumstances, if one didn't commit a crime of treason or rebellion, they wouldn't receive such a punishment. To the person being punished, the consequences were very serious. Not only would they lose their noble status, even their property would be taken away. They would be reduced to a situation worse than commoners. Everyone present didn't expect that Lan Jing would give her own daughter such a heavy punishment. After announcing Qin Fei's punishment, Lan Jing turned around and looked at Zichenyu. Zichenyu's expression became better. To him, Lan Jing gave him a lot of face. If he was facing such a situation, perhaps his heart would soften. Qin Fei naturally knew the consequences of this punishment. It was very serious. From now on, she would no longer have a luxurious palace to live in. She would have to work hard to obtain food and clothing. However, Qin Fei didn't care at all. The luxurious palace here wasn't as comfortable as the villa on Earth. She was a princess here, but she was like a bird in a cage. She didn't have any freedom. To others, this punishment might be equivalent to a death sentence, but to Qin Fei, it was a form of relief. From now on, she could leave here and find her way home. Finally, she could reunite with Yang Tian. "Your Majesty, Lan Qian isn't a princess anymore, is it?" At this moment, a lecherous expert stepped forward and came to the center of the hall. He smiled and said. Everyone understood what this person meant. Qin Fei was no longer a princess and was no longer Lan Jing's daughter. He could forcefully take Qin Fei away and make her his servant. This being was very bold, but he had the right to do so, because he was a planetary state cosmic lord. In the entire Lan Qin Empire, there are less than 1,000 people who are as strong as him. Lan Jing looked coldly at this person and gritted her teeth. "I'll keep my word." This being knew that the country lord was very unhappy, but it didn't matter. With his strength, even if he left the Lan Qin Empire, he could still survive very well. One must know that a being would be treated as a guest of honor no matter where he went. Seeing that the country lord didn't object, this being rubbed his hands and laughed. Seeing him like this, many people looked at him with disdain and despised such a person. Facing the gazes of others, this being acted as if he didn't see them and walked briskly towards Qin Fei. In his expectation, he would immediately leave this palace after capturing Qin Fei. Then, he would bring Qin Fei to his residence and make her his woman first. There were many people in the world who didn't know any better, especially when facing people or things that were extremely tempting to them. They couldn't help but act irrationally. This planetary state cosmic lord was no doubt such a person. "Stop right there." Everyone looked at him. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out. This being turned around and saw Zichenshu's red face. At that moment, Zichenshu was extremely furious. To him, this was an extremely humiliating matter. Not only did Qin Fei reject him, but even an unknown being jumped out and wanted to fight over a woman with him. Fourth prince, this marriage isn't going to happen. What else do you want? The expert looked at Zi Chunshu and said with a smile. Chapter 185. Men. Zi Chunshu said coldly as he looked at the expert who did not know what was good for him. Your Majesty. At this moment, one of Zi Chunshu's guards came out and bowed to Zi Chunshu. Kill him for me. Zi Chunshu said coldly as she looked at the expert. Ha ha ha. Who would have thought that as soon as Zi Chunshu's voice fell, this expert actually laughed out loud. Yes. Zi Chunshu's guard was taken aback after hearing the order, but he quickly regained his composure and answered. Zi Chunshu's guard only had the strength of a Star Lord. He was considered an expert among Zi Chunshu's guards, but he didn't have the courage to win against a Star Lord of the Star Lord realm. The other party could kill him with a single finger. However, the strict rules of the Purple Chunshu Empire didn't allow him to hesitate. Please, the guard smiled bitterly. Before he could finish, he heard Zi Chenyuxing, who was sitting on the stage, say indifferently, Wait. Hearing Zi Chenyuxing's voice, the guard immediately let out a sigh of relief. Finally, he didn't have to send himself to death. The guard immediately turned around and bowed his head towards Zi Chenyuxing. Zi Chenyuxing glanced at Qin Fei, who was standing not far away. She was expressionless and seemed very calm, as though the matter before her had nothing to do with her. In Zi Chenyuxing's heart, his fondness for Qin Fei increased by a bit. Qin Fei was born so beautiful. If she became his daughter-in-law, it would be troublesome to obtain her in the future. But now, in the hearts of these powerful beings in the universe, any moral agreement was like a thin piece of paper. Usually, they could use this piece of paper to hide their hypocrisy. When they didn't need it, they could tear it apart and reveal their true colors. At the moment, Zi Chenyuxing already had thoughts of obtaining Qin Fei. This was also a good opportunity for him. The planetary state Star Lord couldn't help but frown when he saw Zi Chenyuxing suddenly stop him. Zi Chenyuxing glanced at Qin Fei and then turned around to look at the powerful being below. He smiled and asked, May I know your name, sir? He was asking for the name of the expert below. The man smiled and said, I'm Lan Yao. Lan Yao? Hearing these two words, Zi Chenyuxing also smiled and said, So it's Lord Lan Yao. He had heard of Lan Yao and Zi Chenyuxing because there weren't many Star Lords in the first place. Although the two countries were allies in name, they were actually wary of each other. Lan Yao had made a name for himself more than 10 years ago. Legend had it that he had killed more than 1,000 meteor star generals in one go. In the end, he was rewarded according to his merits. This person actually didn't ask for any merit or title. He only asked for 100 beautiful young women from the empire from Lanjing. As a result, Lan Yao's reputation as a lecher spread like wildfire, and many people knew about it. On the surface, Lan Yao was not eye-catching. His figure was not tall, and he usually had a cynical look. But when he fought, he was definitely a ruthless person. Almost all the interstellar countries were countries that revered martial art. The concept of the strong being revered was deeply ingrained in everyone's heart. Lan Yao smiled as he looked at Zi Chenyuxing. His eyes were filled with confidence. This was also a kind of confidence of the strong. Zi Chenyuxing sized Lan Yao up and smiled. This guard doesn't have the right to fight Lord Lan Yao. Let's change to another person. Zi Chenyuxing then waved his hand. Zi Shu's guards hurriedly bowed to their monarch and retreated. Zi Chen Hongguang, come and fight Lord Lan Yao. After Zi Shu's guard left, Zi Chenyuxing said plainly. As soon as he said that, on the side of the Zichen Empire's VIP seats, a young man stood up and bowed to Zi Chenyuxing before quickly walking over to Lan Yao. Lord Lan Yao. This young man called Zi Chen Hongguang looked at Lan Yao proudly. Zi Chen Hongguang was also a Star Lord of the planetary state. In terms of cultivation level, He was on par with Lan Yao. However, there were differences in strength between masters of the same cultivation level. At this moment, everyone looked at the two who were about to fight and couldn't guess who would win. In this palace, a battle between the strong was about to begin. And all of this was because of a beautiful woman. The woman who caused this outcome looked on expressionlessly and didn't say a word. The middle-aged man hiding behind the palace had his arms crossed and a smile on his face, as if he was watching a good show. Whoosh! Suddenly, Zi Chen Hongguang moved and created a gust of wind. In an instant, a total of 12 purple dawn great lights surrounded Lan Yao. Clone tactic. Many spectators couldn't help but stare with their eyes wide open. The so-called clone tactic was to move at high speed and create many clones of oneself to confuse the opponent. They wouldn't be able to tell which one was the real opponent and which one was an illusion. Peng, facing the 12 Zi Chen Hongguang surrounding him, Lei Yao didn't show any signs of panic. All of a sudden, his figure moved and he threw out a punch. Lan Yao's punch was aimed at a Zi Chen Hongguang on his left. This clone tactic was created under high-speed movement. When moving, the speed was very fast. Then, after a short period of movement, it suddenly stopped. At the same time, the number of times it stopped at the same time would determine how many clones would be created. In the end, other than one of these clones, the rest were all illusions. At this moment, if one made a mistake in judgment and attacked one of the illusions, then, the moment they attacked, they would be attacked by the real opponent. As soon as Lan Yao attacked, there was a dull sound. As soon as this sound came out, Lan Yao took a few steps back. The 12 Zi Chen Hongguang also suddenly gathered together and revealed their true body. His true body was the Zi Chen Hongguang that Lan Yao attacked just now. In that instant the two of them punched each other. Zi Chen Hongguang didn't move, but the stone floor under his feet cracked. Zi Chen Hongguang used his body to transfer Lan Yao's power to his feet. Great! Again. After Lan Yao stood still, Zi Chen Hongguang had an excited smile on his face as he shouted. Lan Yao, who finally managed to stop, was surprised. Because he felt that Zi Chen Hongguang was much stronger than him. He was at a disadvantage. Lan Yao tried to recall the names of the elites in the Zichen kingdom, but he couldn't find the name Zi Chen Hongguang in their memories. He then knew that this was Zi Chen Yuxing's personal bodyguard, and the Zichen kingdom had kept it a secret. Every kingdom would do something like this. It was called hiding their strength. Whoosh! Lan Yao's figure suddenly flashed and rushed toward Zi Chen Hongguang with a sharp sound. Peng, in many people's eyes, Lan Yao appeared in front of Zi Chen Hongguang as if he had teleported. However, it was as if Zi Chen Hongguang already knew what Lan Yao was going to do. He twisted his waist and used a powerful side kick to kick Lan Yao's chest, making a dull sound. Chapter 186. In the end, when experts fight, it's a competition of power and speed. Speed is more important. Whether it is power or speed, Lan Yao was much weaker than Zi Chen Hongguang. Lan Yao's defeat was within reason. Lan Yao, who was kicked by Zi Chen Hongguang, crashed into a pillar in the middle of the hall with a bang. The pillar, which had a diameter of 3 meters and was as hard as steel, was now full of cracks. Lan Yao didn't die, but after falling to the ground, he couldn't stand up again. 2 guards immediately went up and checked Lan Yao's injuries. One of them reported to Lan Jing, "King, Lord Lan Yao has been crippled." What the guard meant was that Lan Yao was already a cripple. Even if he was cured, he would be the same as an ordinary person. He couldn't fight for the empire anymore. To a powerful being, this was worse than death. After hearing the result, Lan Jing frowned. It was a huge loss for the Lan Qin Empire to lose a planetary state cosmic lord all of a sudden. No one would sympathize with a loser. Some people even laughed with a face full of contempt. There were even people who had conflicts with Lan Yao. They started to think of ways to make fun of Lan Yao. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment, Lan Yao actually held his chest and stood up from the ground. He opened his mouth and coughed. From his mouth, a large amount of blood spurted out. The previously high-spirited Lan Yao's eyes were now filled with despair. There was no sign of life. This was the fate of a loser. Lan Yao glanced at the people in the hall. These people were not very clear in his eyes, but he could guess what kind of expression was on their faces at this moment. A long time ago, he was also in this crowd, looking at the loser with contempt and even mockery. Now, it was finally his turn. Lan Yao didn't regret it. At this moment, he actually laughed. Qin Fei's eyes finally had a look of sympathy. Lan Yao saw this from afar, and his smile became wider. Since when did he, Lan Yao, need a woman's sympathy? Suddenly, there was a flash of determination in Lan Yao's eyes. Pung! Lan Yao's head hit the pillar behind him. His head exploded like a watermelon that had been hit. The two guards next to Lan Yao noticed Lan Yao's actions, but they didn't stop him. They knew that for someone who was once a powerful being but would become a cripple later on, this was the best way to escape. Qin Fei looked at Lan Yao's body. She couldn't bear it and turned around. This kind of situation was truly too bloody and cruel. If Yang Tian came to this world, would he be able to endure this kind of environment? Qin Fei couldn't help but think of this question. Suddenly, Yang Tian's strong expression appeared in her mind. Seeing Lan Yao die in such a manner, the person who felt the most relieved was none other than the fourth prince, Zi Qinshu. He watched as Lan Yao's body was dragged away and two maids came to clean it up. He turned around and looked at Lan Jing. Although the first princess has been expelled from the Lan Qin Empire, I still hope to complete this marriage. He didn't expect that as soon as he finished speaking, Zi Chenyuxing, who was sitting on the stage, snorted coldly to show his dissatisfaction. The fourth prince had always been afraid of his father. When Zi Chenyuxing snorted, he immediately lowered his head in fear. How can a person like this be worthy of my daughter? At this time, the middle-aged man standing at the back of the palace smiled coldly and mumbled to himself. My king, the agreement from before is still valid. I still want to bring her back to the empire. At this time, Zi Chenyuxing turned around and said to Lan Jing. Everyone could see that the king of the Zichen Empire, Zi Chenyuxing, also had his eyes on the princess of the Lan Qin Empire. But under these circumstances, no one dared to laugh at Zi Chenyuxing. After Zi Chenyuxing finished speaking, he looked at Lan Jing with a burning gaze. That gaze made Lan Jing very uncomfortable. She knew that if she didn't agree to Zi Chenyuxing's request, the consequences would be severe. Zi Chenyuxing was also known to be a pervert in this universe. Zi Qinshu raised his head and looked at his father in disbelief. He didn't expect that his father would actually fight over a woman with him. In Zi Qinshu's eyes there was some dissatisfaction. This glance was noticed by Zi Chenyuxing. He suddenly turned his head and looked at his son. Zi Qinshu immediately lowered his head. I said before that she is no longer a member of my Lan family. Lan Jing thought for a moment and said again. At this moment, Qin Fei was completely disappointed in her biological mother. Although this mother gave birth to her, she didn't have any feelings for her. The mother on earth loved her as if she was her own daughter. At this moment, Qin Fei really missed the days on earth. But here there was no warmth to speak of. When Lan Jing's words fell, Zi Chenyuxing laughed. To him, this was just a small matter. But to Qin Fei, this was something that couldn't be tolerated. At this time, she thought of what the uncle said to her before. That uncle told her that in Lan Jing's eyes, she was just a chess piece. That uncle also predicted what the situation in the palace would be like after she appeared. Ever since she appeared and said those words of rejection, everything had developed according to that uncle's predictions. There was no difference at all. Could it be that this uncle was a prophet? Qin Fei was very surprised. A prophet was someone who knew the art of prophecy. In this vast universe there were people like this. Many prophets could predict that something big would happen for a very long time. What should I do next? That's right. Qin Fei thought of the uncle's words. Aren't you all too disrespectful to me? Qin Fei suddenly opened her mouth. Her clear and gentle voice rang out in the palace once again. Zi Chenyexing knew that Qin Fei would reject, so he smiled and said, "This is the best outcome for you. Don't tell me you want to become a commoner girl and be snatched away by others and become a commodity to be sold by countless men?" Zi Chenyexing's words were said in a calm tone, but there was a strong threat in his words. His meaning was very clear. If Qin Fei didn't listen to him obediently, her outcome would be like what Zi Chenyexing said. If Qin Fei was a girl without a backer, even if she was already a domain lord, she wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being controlled by Zi Chenyexing. Fortunately, Qin Fei had a middle-aged uncle with unfathomable strength. Ha ha ha! Right at this moment, loud laughter sounded out from the side door at the back of the palace. Immediately after, a middle-aged man with thick eyebrows and big eyes appeared before everyone's eyes. "Uncle!" Qin Fei couldn't help but call out happily. She didn't know that this uncle had been watching her from the side all along. Now that this uncle had appeared, she instantly heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Otherwise, Qin Fei wouldn't know what to do next. Who was this person? When they saw the middle-aged man, a huge question mark appeared in the minds of many people. He glanced at Lan Jing and Zi Chenyexing, then swept his gaze over the people below. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "I'm called the Immeasurable Starlord." Immeasurable Starlord? Never heard of it. Everyone was puzzled again because they had never heard of who the Immeasurable Starlord was. Chapter 187. Although many years had passed, the young man now had the appearance of a middle-aged man. Back then, the Immeasurable Starlord had purposely looked young, but Lan Jing still recognized him at a glance. Lan Jing looked at the Immeasurable Starlord and was so shocked that she couldn't speak for a moment. Although this man's appearance was within her expectations, she still couldn't help but be surprised. "Lord, who is this person?" Zi Chenyexing frowned at Lan Jing and asked faintly. He saw Lan Jing's expression and knew that she knew this middle-aged man who called himself the Immeasurable Starlord. Lan Jing actually didn't know the true identity of this middle-aged man. She only knew that this man suddenly came to the vast martial planet 20 years ago and took a fancy to her beauty. Then, this man was very powerful. Even the planet-grade domain lords of the Empire couldn't stop him. Back then, when this man left, Lan Jing begged him to stay. In the end, he still left. He left very straightforwardly. This made her understand that this man had no feelings for her at all. He only took a fancy to her beautiful body. "It's not important that you don't know who I am. As long as you know that Qin Fei is my daughter, it's fine." The Immeasurable Starlord smiled at Qin Fei and said faintly. Qin Fei couldn't help but open her eyes wide. She hadn't expected that this man was actually her biological father. Previously, when this middle-aged man had come here to help Qin Fei, she had already thought about this problem and guessed that this middle-aged man should be related to her. However, she had never thought that the Immeasurable Starlord was her biological father. "Little girl, are you very surprised?" The Immeasurable Starlord asked with a smile when he saw Qin Fei's wide-eyed look. "Yes." Qin Fei nodded. Although she was surprised, Qin Fei was still very calm. Ever since she had come to the Lanchen Empire as the eldest princess, there had been too many things that had surprised her. First, a biological mother had appeared. Then, the middle-aged man who had been taking care of her had become her biological father. It seemed reasonable. Qin Fei thought that a person who had nothing to do with her couldn't possibly help her. Ha ha ha! The Immeasurable Starlord laughed heartily as if there was no one around. "You want to take Lan Qian away?" Lan Jing frowned. The Immeasurable Starlord stopped laughing. "That's right. She's my biological daughter, so of course I have to take her away. I've seen clearly how you've treated her during this period of time. No. Lan Jing shook her head and rejected him directly. You can stay, but you can't take your daughter away. Immeasurable Starlord knew what Lan Jing was planning and smiled. If I want to take her away, no one can stop me. Is that so? Lan Jing sneered. You can try. Men. After saying that, Lan Jing suddenly shouted coldly. Whoosh! There was a gust of wind, and a black-robed man suddenly appeared in the hall. Sir Immeasurable Starlord, long time no see. The black-robed man greeted the Immeasurable Starlord with a smile. Then, the black-cloaked man looked at Lan Jing and said, I've already dealt with Lord Monarch's subordinates. When the black-robed man said that, everyone knew that the person Lan Jing had called for was not this black-robed man. Lan Jing frowned and clenched her fists in her robe. The current situation was no longer under her control. In order to prevent any accidents, Lan Jing had already asked for help from an elite who could suppress all the elites present. But now, obviously, that expert would not appear again. The black-robed man had a black cloak over his head. His face was full of wrinkles, and he held a strange-looking staff in his hand. The staff was light red in color, and had been polished until it was smooth as if it had been oiled. There was also a fist-sized blue crystal ball hanging on the staff. The black-robed man's arrival made the Immeasurable Starlord frown. He suddenly narrowed his eyes and said in an uncertain tone, You're the Super Starlord Temple's priest. Hee. The black-robed old man laughed. It seemed that the black-robed old man agreed with the Immeasurable Starlord's guess. What are you doing here? The Immeasurable Starlord looked at the black-robed old man and asked calmly. Because I've taken a fancy to this girl. She's the best candidate for the next goddess of our temple, the black-robed old man said calmly. Goddess? Hearing the black-robed old man's words, the people in the hall were no longer shocked. Instead, they were horrified. What kind of place was the Super Starlord Temple? It was the place with the most elites in the entire universe. Even the countless interstellar empires had to act according to the will of the Super Starlord Temple. If they dared to go against it, they would be destroyed. The goddess of the Super Starlord Temple was the symbol of the temple. Pure, kind, upright. As long as it was a compliment, it could be used on the goddess. No. This time, it was the Immeasurable Starlord's turn to say these two words. The black-robed old man looked at the Immeasurable Starlord and said with a smile, Immeasurable Starlord, although you're powerful, you can't make an enemy of the entire temple. Although this girl is your daughter, the goddess belongs to the entire universe to the temple. Please don't interfere with the affairs of our temple. The Immeasurable Starlord spat at the black-robed old man and sneered. Don't think I don't know what kind of role the goddess has in your temple. She's just the face of your temple. In reality, she doesn't have any power. The black-robed old man wasn't angry at the Immeasurable Starlord's indecent behavior. Instead, he smiled and said, No matter what you say, you can't change the will of our temple. Now, I'm going to take her away. I don't want to be some goddess. At this time, Qin Fei's voice sounded in the hall again. In Qin Fei's heart, being the goddess of the Super Starlord Temple was no different from being the princess of an interstellar empire. What she wanted to do the most now was to reunite with Yang Tian. She needed Yang Tian's embrace. Girl, this isn't up to you. The black-robed old man looked at Qin Fei and said, Because you belong to the entire universe. From the moment you were born, this fate was already decided and can't be changed. Unless. At this point, the black-robed old man didn't continue. Qin Fei caught the black-robed old man's words and immediately asked, Unless what? The black-robed old man said, Unless the temple is destroyed. But this is impossible. Even if the entire universe is destroyed, the Super Starlord Temple won't be destroyed. It will continue to exist in the next universe. Pung! Immeasurable Starlord threw a punch at the black-robed old man. This punch came very suddenly. Immeasurable Star-Lord's fist produced a sonic boom in the air. At this moment, the black-robed old man's black robe fluttered without any wind, as if it was blown by the wind from Immeasurable Star-Lord's punch. This situation didn't look exciting. Compared to the battle between Zi Chen-hong and Lan Yao, it was too different. However, the black-robed old man said, "Immeasurable Star-Lord, please don't do this again. Your punch can destroy a star and slaughter billions of lives. Please be careful. Otherwise, you will be investigated by the temple." "Humph." Immeasurable Star-Lord snorted coldly to express his dissatisfaction. He didn't punch the black-robed old man again. In the eyes of others, Immeasurable Star-Lord seemed to have given in. That's right. In this universe, who would dare to become enemies with the entire Super Star-Lord Temple? However, this situation was like a play in the eyes of some people. Other than Immeasurable Star-Lord and the black-robed old man, no one understood how powerful Immeasurable Star-Lord's punch was. They didn't understand because they weren't on the same level. Ha ha ha! At this moment, Zi Qinxing, who was standing to the side, suddenly laughed loudly. Lan Jing frowned and looked at Zi Qinxing, not knowing why he was laughing. Was this matter very funny? Many people stared at Zi Qinxing. In fact, like Zi Qinxing, there were many people who found it funny. This was because they thought that the situation in front of them was just a trick between the self-proclaimed Immeasurable Star-Lord and a black-robed man of unknown origin. Destroying a star with one punch? Who would believe that? One had to know that this was just a legend. It was hard to say whether it was true or not. Without seeing it with their own eyes, they naturally wouldn't believe it. If a human wanted to destroy a celestial body in the universe, the power he possessed would no longer belong to a human. While laughing at Zi Qinxing, Immeasurable Star-Lord and the black-robed old man's expressions weren't calm. The two of them looked at each other in silence. Suddenly, Zi Qinxing stopped laughing and said loudly with a gloomy face, "Men?" "Yes." Zi Chen-hong, who had previously defeated Lan Yao, stood out and bowed to Zi Qinxing. "Expel the two of them," Zi Qinxing said coldly. Chapter 188. Lan Jing didn't say anything in response to Zi Qinxing's order. "Yes." Zi Chen-hongguang glanced at the black-robed old man and the Immeasurable Star-Lord standing above him before he nodded. "Sirs, please." Zi Chen-hongguang didn't dare to use force. He looked at the black-robed old man and the Immeasurable Star-Lord. He raised his arm and made an inviting gesture. His hand pointed in the direction of the palace door. "If you want to take my daughter away, I can't stop you. However, allow me to say a few words to her." The Immeasurable Star-Lord ignored Zi Chen-hongguang and looked at the black-robed old man. "Sure." The black-robed old man also ignored Zi Chen-hongguang and nodded. Zi Chen-hongguang was very angry at their disregard. To him, this was a very shameful thing, especially in a situation where so many people were looking at him. "The two of you, please," Zi Chen-hongguang said in a deep voice. There was a hint of anger in his voice. "Little child, why are you so anxious?" The black-robed old man turned his head and looked at Zi Chen-hongguang as he spoke in an indifferent manner. Zi Chen-hongguang looked into the eyes of the black-robed old man. Suddenly, his eyes widened and he was stunned. An expression of shock appeared on his face. In an instant, Zi Chen-hongguang discovered that he had actually arrived in the universe. In front of him was a gray planet. This huge planet seemed to have been bitten by a giant beast. A large piece of it was missing. Rumble, standing in front of this planet, Zi Chen-hongguang seemed to be able to hear the sound of this planet moving through space. This planet, like Earth, was orbiting a huge star. Originally, its orbit was fixed, but now it had deviated from its orbit. Soon, this planet collided with another planet. The two huge planets collided and instantly turned into countless meteor fragments. These meteors didn't have their own gravity and were attracted by the huge star, flying directly towards it. Did you see that? At that moment, the black-gowned old man's voice sounded in Zichun Hongguang's ears. Zichun Hongguang was startled awake by the black-robed old man's voice and let out a startled cry. The black-robed old man said, "This is the planet that was destroyed by the immeasurable Star-Lord. If you don't believe me, you can go to the coordinates *****. Look into it." After the black-robed old man finished talking, he turned his head around, no longer paying attention to Purple Star Hongguang, and said to Immeasurable Star-Lord, "Go then. Remember, you only have 1 hour. That should be enough time for you and your daughter." After the black-robed old man finished speaking, he turned around and walked out of the hall. "Stop!" Fourth Prince Zichunshu stepped forward and extended his hand to block the black-robed old man's path. Zishu had already lost his cool because he longed to obtain Qin Fei. However, Qin Fei would soon leave with this old man and go to the Superstar God Palace to become a goddess. This way, he, the fourth Prince Zishu, would never have a chance. One had to know that in the eyes of the Superstar Divine Temple's experts, the Purple Star Empire was just an unrated empire in a remote star field. The change in Qin Fei's identity was really shocking. Until now, many people still hadn't reacted and thought that everything that happened before their eyes was fake. Among these people, Lan Jing was included. The black-robed old man ignored Zichunshu and continued walking forward. A strange thing happened. Zichunshu's hand actually passed through the black-robed old man's body. Tap tap. The black-robed old man's cane was still tapping on the floor of the hall, giving off a rhythmic sound. This old man slowly walked out of the hall step by step. His back view looked no different from an old man with 1 foot in the grave. When people saw this, they couldn't help but have a contradictory feeling. The black-robed old man clearly existed in this hall, but he also seemed like a shadow. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even Zichunshu's mouth was wide open, his expression uncertain. "Xiao Fei, come with me." After the black-robed old man's figure disappeared from the hall's entrance, Immeasurable Star-Lord looked at Qin Fei and said with a smile, "Okay." Qin Fei nodded. Compared to her birth mother, Qin Fei felt that this birth father was more humane. Qin Fei followed Immeasurable Star-Lord out of the back of the hall through a side door. After walking through a few corridors and turning a few corners, they soon arrived at a viewing platform in the hall. During this process, the guards of the hall seemed to have been immobilized and didn't move at all. This viewing platform was very high. Standing there and looking forward, one could have a panoramic view of the situation hundreds of miles ahead. In the distance there were countless towering pyramid-like platforms. Qin Fei had stood on those platforms before. Near this palace were the residences of the nobles of the Lanqian Empire. They were incomparably tall like palaces. Then, there were the houses of the rich. Further away, there were the houses of the commoners. With the Lanqian Empire's palace as the center, the layers of buildings were clearly layered. The residences of different classes were separated by wide roads. Although Qin Fei had been here for a long time, it was her first time here. Standing here and looking at the surrounding scenery, everything seemed to be under her feet. It made one's mind open up and a heroic spirit couldn't help but arise in one's heart. Immeasurable Star-Lord stood at the edge of the viewing platform with his hands behind his back. His figure was tall and straight, and his body emitted the aura of an expert. Qin Fei looked at Immeasurable Star-Lord's back with complicated feelings. The two of them didn't speak and were silent for a long time. Suddenly, Immeasurable Star-Lord turned around and said to Qin Fei with a smile, "Xiao Fei, what do you think about becoming the goddess of the Superstar Divine Temple?" Qin Fei looked at her biological father's eyes and saw the determination in his eyes. She knew that if she didn't agree, this father would definitely not hand her over to the black-robed old man. I don't know." Qin Fei thought for a while, and could only answer like this. Qin Fei was clear about the situation just now. She knew that although this strange father was powerful, He couldn't become an enemy of the entire Super-Star Divine Temple. Hearing Qin Fei's answer, Immeasurable Starlord laughed. You are a sensible child. Not bad. If I don't agree, it will be hard to avoid a big battle with the people of the Super-Star Divine Temple. Father also doesn't have the certainty of victory. I have already met those experts of the Divine Temple. Each and every one of them is abnormally strong. Just like that old man just now. Father doesn't have the certainty of defeating him. In the Super-Star Divine Temple, there are many experts like him. After Immeasurable Starlord finished speaking, he coldly snorted and said, Father saying this doesn't mean that he is afraid of them. If I fight them with my life on the line, they can't do anything to me unless a few old monsters come out personally. And Qin Fei nodded, very understanding. Immeasurable Starlord was not like an ordinary parent to Qin Fei. He didn't show any guilt towards Qin Fei and spoke confidently and confidently. Qin Fei also felt that it was natural because she knew that this father of hers was a powerhouse in the universe. Immeasurable Starlord sized up Qin Fei and suddenly laughed, saying, Daughter, in fact, you are quite suitable to be the goddess of that divine temple. This way, Father won't have to worry about your safety. Moreover, in the divine temple, you can also receive better training. Qin Fei frowned and said, But this way, I won't be able to see Yang Tian again. I am his wife. Also, Yang Tian doesn't know about my current situation. He will definitely be very anxious. Immeasurable Starlord smiled and said, You don't have to worry about this. After this matter is over, I will definitely go and see that kid and see if he is worthy of my daughter. Thank you, Father, Qin Fei said with a smile. The two didn't mention anything about the Divine Temple and began to chat about some common things. Qin Fei was full of curiosity about this universe and had many questions to ask her father. Immeasurable Starlord also patiently answered. This kind of atmosphere made Qin Fei feel very comfortable. Chapter 189. An hour passed by very quickly. When the last second ended, the black-robed old man appeared on the observation platform on time. Neither the Immeasurable Starlord nor Qin Fei were surprised by the black-robed old man's sudden appearance. Looking at the two, the black-robed old man said indifferently, Time's up. The Immeasurable Starlord looked at the black-robed old man with some displeasure and asked, Old man, the universe is so big. Why did you choose my daughter? The Immeasurable Starlord did not expect that his daughter would become a goddess. The black-robed old man said, Our temple's prophet said that in the distant Lan Qin Empire, there is a princess. She is beautiful, kind, and smart. So, I came. The black-robed old man's praise for Qin Fei did not make the Immeasurable Starlord happy. He only scolded helplessly, Bullshit prophet? Hee. The black-robed old man laughed and said to the Immeasurable Starlord, The person you are looking for is in the distant Death Starfield. That is the place where our Super-Star Divinity Temple exiles our sinners. You will see him there. This was the question that the Immeasurable Starlord wanted to ask. He did not expect the black-robed old man to say it in advance. The Immeasurable Starlord was not surprised and only nodded. Lady Goddess, it is time to depart. We have already prepared the worship ceremony to welcome you. The black-robed old man said and bowed to Qin Fei. Qin Fei was not dissatisfied with this black-robed old man and nodded. Ping! The black-robed old man knocked his cane on the ground. The blue sphere on the cane instantly emitted a dazzling light, covering everything in Qin Fei's eyes. Only the world formed by the blue light was left. In Qin Fei's eyes, it was as if she was floating in a wonderful world. She was enveloped by the blue light, and her heart was peaceful. The bright light appeared in front of Qin Fei. The black-robed old man stood behind Qin Fei and said indifferently, Lady Goddess, please. Qin Fei turned around but did not see the Immeasurable Starlord. She was a bit disappointed. After sighing slightly, she slowly walked toward the light in front of her. If an earthling saw this scene, they would definitely think that this was the path to heaven. After walking into the world filled with light, Qin Fei could not help but close her eyes. After a while, "Lady Goddess, we've arrived," suddenly, the black-gowned old man's voice sounded in Qin Fei's ears. Qin Fei opened her eyes. What appeared before her eyes was a marvelous palace floating in the universe. The star field where this palace was located was extremely beautiful. It was surrounded by spiral-shaped five-colored star systems. They were like individual stars, floating above the palace and casting a wonderful light onto the palace, making it seem like a dream. Qin Fei felt like she was in a dream, and she was in a dream. When would she wake up from this dream and see Yang Tian's smiling face? The entire divine palace was made up of countless palaces and buildings, all of which were exquisite beyond compare. The place where Qin Fei appeared was the entrance of a magnificent palace in the divine temple building. When Qin Fei's vision recovered, what appeared in her eyes were numerous maids in white robes. These maids were prostrating themselves on the steps of the palace entrance, while the guards on both sides of the steps were holding their chests, kneeling on one knee and bowing their heads. Those guards were all wearing black armor. Each and every one of them was incomparably robust. They even had blood-red cloaks on their back. The aura emitted from their bodies made Qin Fei feel that every single one of them was several times stronger than that person called Zi Chen Hongguang. Such an expert was only a guard on duty in the temple. It was no wonder that his father, a superstar lord, had no choice but to submit in the face of the temple. These people were bowing to her. Qin Fei could tell at a glance. "Get up!" After being a princess for a while, Qin Fei was no longer surprised by this situation. She raised her hand and said indifferently. As soon as Qin Fei finished speaking, the white-robed maids and guards dared to get up. Although they stood up, they still lowered their heads slightly and did not dare to look directly at Qin Fei. At this moment, the black-robed old man stood beside Qin Fei and said with a smile, "The enthronement ceremony is about to begin. Lady Goddess, please get ready." After the black-robed old man finished speaking, he bowed to Qin Fei and walked down the steps, disappearing from Qin Fei's sight. As soon as the black-robed old man left, Qin Fei looked at the white-robed maids in front of her and suddenly felt a sense of loneliness in her heart. Qin Fei was led to the goddess palace. The first thing she did was to take a bath. In the spacious bathtub, there was pure and colorless water. A beautiful maid walked over with a vase shaped like a flower vase and poured the blue liquid in the vase into the bathtub. As soon as the blue liquid came into contact with the bath water, it quickly spread and dyed the bath water light blue. It emitted a wonderful fragrance. Qin Fei was stripped naked by the maids and walked into the warm bath water shyly. This kind of bath water had a magical effect. After bathing, Qin Fei felt that there was no dirt on her body and she became incomparably pure. At the same time, her body emitted a wonderful fragrance. What was even more amazing was that the places that were supposed to be big were bigger. Her waist was more slender and her skin was more white and tender. Looking at her body in the mirror, if it was not for the fact that her appearance did not change much, Qin Fei would have thought that she had changed her body. Wearing a very comfortable black robe that seemed to be made of silk, the maids began to dress Qin Fei up. Qin Fei, who was already incomparably beautiful, did not need to wear any jewelry. The maids only drew a lightning-shaped blue pattern in between her eyebrows to slightly raise her eyebrows. Then, they applied eyeshadow. After some simple makeup, Qin Fei's entire temperament had changed a little. At this moment, not only was she beautiful and noble, she also gave people a kind of majesty. Lady Goddess is really beautiful. After the makeup was done, a beautiful maid praised. Qin Fei looked at herself in the mirror and smiled faintly. Then, she turned her head and asked the white-robed maid beside her, "Where is your previous Lady Goddess?" The white-robed maid did not expect Qin Fei to ask this question. She was stunned for a moment before saying, The term of office of every lady goddess is 10,000 years. The previous lady goddess has reached the end of her lifespan and is sleeping in the Eternal Life Palace. Eternal Life Palace? This name was really good. Death meant eternal life. Qin Fei's hair was not tied up and was just draped over her shoulders. Under the escort of many maids, she came to the palace door at the highest point of the temple. Here, there were priests in black robes, heavenly officials, and experts of the temple wearing black armor. Hundreds of thousands of people were densely packed in front of the palace door. The moment Qin Fei appeared, these experts prostrated themselves and respectfully bowed to Qin Fei. These people were the experts of the entire universe. At this moment, they were sincerely bowing to her. Qin Fei had never thought of such a situation before. The process of becoming a lady goddess was like a fairy tale to her. It was too unreal. However, Qin Fei understood that most of these experts were just completing the ceremony. In their hearts, she, the lady goddess, was just a symbol of the superstar divine temple. In the distance, immeasurable Star-Lord was floating in the universe. In front of him was a colorful starfield. Although he could not see it, he knew that his daughter was receiving the worship of many experts in that temple. Not long after, immeasurable Star-Lord smiled and suddenly disappeared. Immeasurable Star-Lord still had to complete his daughter's request and see how that guy called Yang Tian was doing. At the same time, the black-robed old man who had found Qin Fei before also came out of the superstar divine temple and walked in the universe. Like immeasurable Star-Lord, he also wanted to make a trip to the Death Starfield. As he walked, countless stars quickly retreated. His speed had already far surpassed the speed of light. Suddenly, a masked black-robed man standing on a cyan bird appeared in front of the black-robed old man and blocked his path. The black-robed old man had no choice but to stop. Motherf ******************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** If you go to the Death Star field again, do you believe that I won't tear down your temple? The masked black-robed man standing on the cyan bird looked at the black-robed old man and scolded. The black-robed old man looked at the person in front of him with an uncertain expression. After a long time, he sighed and went back the way he came. These bastards, if I don't remind them, they will treat me as if I don't exist. The masked black-robed man looked in the direction the black-robed old man disappeared and scolded again. Chapter 190. The huge circular building of the Hela tribe was a Colosseum. At this moment, Qin Jingyang was standing in the middle of the Colosseum with a rusty knife in his hand. A few dozen meters in front of him was a huge iron cage. Inside the cage was a huge lion beast. This lion beast was similar to the lions on Earth. However, it was at least 3 times bigger. To humans, it was a huge beast. Based on Qin Jingyang's experience, this lion beast was equivalent to a level 8 beast on Earth. It should not be difficult for Qin Jingyang to defeat it. However, Qin Jingyang did not plan to kill this lion beast cleanly. If the process was too smooth, the beasts prepared for him in the future would become stronger and stronger. After this battle, there were still 8 more battles. The Hela tribesmen did not care if he lived or died. They only wanted the battle to be exciting. On this planet, the most exciting entertainment was watching the Battle of Japan live. The battle had not started yet, but this Colosseum that could hold tens of thousands of people was already full of people. The Hela tribesmen were also gambling addicts. Before the battle started, many people had already placed their bet. There was only one outcome, and that was victory or defeat. Because this was Qin Jingyang's first battle, the ratio of people betting on him winning and losing was about the same. Hela! 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 Before the battle started, the entire Colosseum was filled with the cheers of the audience. This situation was similar to the intense football matches on Earth before the YS virus outbreak. Qin Jingyang looked at the lion beast in the cage and turned a deaf ear to the deafening shouts. Although this lion beast was not a very powerful beast to him, Qin Jingyang still had to treat it seriously. The lion beast in the cage was captured by the Hela tribesmen. Its 4 legs and neck were locked with black iron buckles. Although it was locked in the cage, it could not move freely. At this moment, the lion beast was staring at Qin Jingyang with a pair of cold eyes. To it, this human in front of it was its food. Ka ka ka. Suddenly, the black iron buckles that imprisoned the lion beast made a noise and loosened. At the same time, the cage opened with a clang. The iron buckle that originally imprisoned the lion beast and the cage had intricate mechanisms. As soon as the lion beast got out of the cage, it pounced on Qin Jingyang impatiently. Its speed was extremely fast. Qin Jingyang narrowed his eyes and dodged to the side when he saw the lion beast pouncing towards him. At this moment, Qin Jingyang was only using 70% of his speed and strength. Purring! The lion beast's huge claws ruthlessly struck the hard stone slabs. The 2 stone slabs under its feet immediately shattered and stone debris splattered everywhere. Hela, at this moment, the audience cheered again. Qin Jingyang had been here for half a month. Although he had been abused previously, he had been eating and living well during this period of time. This was because the people of the Hela tribe wanted to see exciting battles, not a dying man who could not even resist before being devoured by exotic beasts. Anyone who was in Qin Jingyang's situation would be very unhappy. Qin Jing also wanted to kill this arrogant lion beast in front of him with one slash, but he could not. Seeing that the lion beast could not pounce on him, it immediately turned around and let out a howl before pouncing on Qin Jingyang again. This time, Qin Jingyang did not dodge like before. Instead, he waited until the lion beast's huge claws were about to touch his body before he rolled on the ground and dodged. The lion beast's sharp claws left a deep wound on Qin Jingyang's shoulder. Blood immediately flowed out. Hela, seeing this exciting scene, the audience cheered again. After rolling on the ground a few times, Qin Jingyang let out a long sigh. To be honest, it was quite difficult for him to perform so well that no one would be able to tell that he was faking it. Just like that, the lion beast kept on attacking, and Qin Jing kept on dodging. During this process, it was not that Qin Jingyang did not fight back. Sometimes, he would slash at the lion beast and cut open its fur. In less than half an hour, there were many wounds on Qin Jingyang and the lion beast's bodies. Qin Jingyang and the lion beast's bodies were covered in blood. Every time there was an exciting attack or dodge, the audience would cheer. As the battle went on, the cheers became louder and louder. The sound that was gathered in the circular animal arena spread far and wide. At this time, Yang Tian was standing on top of a mountain, looking down curiously at the strange city of the Hela tribe. If it were not for the fact that he was absorbing the energy from the blue crystal to cultivate and strengthen the power in his body, Yang Tian would have arrived here a few days earlier. Although he was worried about Qin Fei and wanted to see her immediately, he understood that more haste would not bring success. The more powerful he was, the more he could overcome difficulties and obstacles. Sharpening the knife would not delay the work of cutting wood. Squeak! At this time, the little blue dragon cried out. It told Yang Tian that there was a powerful ultra beast in a mountain far to the left. A powerful ultra beast? Yang Tian looked at the direction that the little blue dragon was pointing at, then turned around and looked at the most conspicuous animal arena below. At this time, Yang Tian could hear the sounds coming from the animal arena. Xiaolong, the ultra beasts here do not have beast cores. Let's not bother about them. Let's go down and have a look. Finding Grandpa is more important. Since they were far apart, Yang Tian could not see Qin Jingyang in the animal arena. He thought about it and said, "Squeak." The little blue dragon cried out twice to show its agreement. Yang Tian looked at the surrounding terrain and found a way down the mountain. He then brought the little blue dragon down the mountain to the human city. At this time, Qin Jingyang took the opportunity and stabbed the rusty sword in his hand into the lion beast's neck. Roar! The huge lion beast did not die immediately. It howled and pounced at Qin Jingyang again. At this time, Qin Jingyang was too lazy to fight with the lion beast again. He began to run around the animal arena. Huff! When the spectators saw this, they hissed in dissatisfaction. Qin Jingyang did not care what others thought. He only wanted to waste time with the lion beast. A large amount of blood flowed out from the lion beast's neck. As it ran, blood splattered everywhere. Everywhere it went, the ground was dyed red. After more than 10 minutes, the lion beast was finally exhausted. It let out an unwilling and hoarse cry and fell to the ground. After about an hour of battle, Qin Jingyang won. This process was very boring for an elite, but for a normal person it was very exciting. When the result of the battle was announced, some cheered and some cursed. Those who cheered were those who bet on Qin Jingyang winning, and those who cursed were, of course, those who lost their bets. Qin Jingyang looked around coldly. He knew that he had finally passed this stage. Chapter 191. Qin Jingyang, who was covered in wounds, was locked up again. He had no choice. Without the key to open the underground pyramid, there was no point in escaping now. Moreover, there were many strong people in the Hela tribe. It was not difficult to capture him. Qin Jingyang obediently put on the shackles and was locked up in a clean room in the beast fighting arena. Qin Jingyang was treated well during the time he was in the beast fighting arena. Not long after he was locked up in the room, someone sent meat to Qin Jingyang. All that was left was to wait for the next battle. If he could win 9 consecutive battles, Qin Jingyang would be free. By then, Qin Jingyang would be able to find that familiar figure. Ever since he came to this planet, Qin Jingyang's appearance had gradually changed. He no longer suppressed the transformation of his body by the energy in his body. He now looked like a middle-aged man. Yang Tian might not be able to recognize the current Qin Jingyang. In less than half an hour, Yang Tian arrived at the simple city of the Hela tribe. At this time, the little blue dragon had already hidden in Yang Tian's backpack. Yang Tian's arrival immediately attracted the attention of the Hela tribe. However, they did not come forward to make things difficult for Yang Tian. Instead, they secretly monitored him. Qin Jingyang had encountered such treatment before. Yang Tian's senses were very sharp. As soon as he entered the city, he sensed that someone was following him. Yang Tian naturally did not care about this. As he strolled around the city, Yang Tian saw many people pouring out of the huge circular building in the middle. Among these people, a small number of them were riding on exotic beasts pulling carriages. There were no horses on this planet, but there were many exotic beasts that could pull carriages and be used as horses. All kinds of exotic beasts were an eye-opener for Yang Tian. Perhaps they had sensed the weak aura emitted by the little blue dragon, but these exotic beasts didn't dare to get too close to Yang Tian. Under the control of their masters, they kept as far away from Yang Tian as possible. There were a lot of people coming out of the Colosseum. The wide road wasn't enough and it was very crowded. But when it came to Yang Tian, it suddenly separated. The surroundings of Yang Tian seemed very empty. Naturally, the people who were monitoring Yang Tian noticed this. The people who passed by Yang Tian all looked at Yang Tian with curious and vigilant eyes. This was because Yang Tian's attire was too similar to the person in the beast-fighting Colosseum. They guessed that Yang Tian might have come from the same planet as the people in the animal-fighting Colosseum. As a newcomer, Yang Tian did not want to cause any trouble. He ignored the gazes of the people around him, as if he did not see them. But sometimes, even if you didn't want to cause trouble, trouble would take the initiative to find you. Especially for someone like Yang Tian, who had a strong sense of justice, trouble would always find him. It was like that now, pew dong, suddenly, the sound of exotic beasts running could be heard from the front. Immediately after, the crowd in front of Yang Tian panicked and scattered to the sides, shouting loudly. When exotic beasts ran, their movements were very loud, and the ground trembled slightly. Yang Tian had seen this kind of situation on TV before. In period dramas, there would be soldiers on horseback, or hedonistic sons of rich families, riding horses on the street. It would be such a scene. Yang Tian wanted to dodge, but he suddenly furrowed his brows. Because in the middle of the road, a little girl who was only 7 or 8 years old, wearing an animal skin coat, had her back facing the direction of the sound, unaware of it. At this moment, an exotic beast that looked like a cat beast and was as big as a cow was pulling a gorgeous carriage and rushing over. This cat beast was covered in black fur and had 2 blue eyes. Its 4 legs were thick and strong. When it ran, it did not care about the situation in front of it. Its eyes were filled with a violent expression. The reason why it was called a cat beast was because the eyes of this cat beast were too similar to the cats on Earth. In the blink of an eye, this huge cat beast was about to crash into the little girl. With Yang Tian's current speed, he could easily carry the little girl away and dodge the cat beast's crash. But he did not do so, because he was angry. Even if this was the territory of the mutated race, he could not stand to see things that hurt young lives. So, bang! Yang Tian dodged and hugged the little girl in an instant. Then, he punched out. Yang Tian's fist directly hit the middle of the cat beast's head. If one's reaction was fast enough, at this moment, one could see that the cat beast was stopped by Yang Tian's punch. Then, its body suddenly bulged, as if it was pumped with air. Then, there was another bang sound. The huge cat beast's body actually exploded. A large amount of blood mixed with its internal organs, bones, and flesh rushed into the sealed carriage behind the cat beast. At this time, the carriage was still moving at a high speed. When it was hit by the flesh and blood, it flipped over backward. The door of the carriage had already been broken open. The people inside were naturally hit by the flesh and blood. Then, there was another bang sound and the entire carriage exploded. This process happened in the blink of an eye. The cat beast's exploded flesh and blood splattered on the surrounding people. The scattered carriage parts also injured many people. At this moment, the gloomy Yang Tian put down the little girl in his arms. What? The little girl was stunned before. Now, she reacted and cried loudly. Thank you. A middle-aged woman wearing animal skin ran over at this moment and thanked Yang Tian. Then, she carried the little girl away. The surroundings fell into silence. Everyone looked at Yang Tian with dumbfounded expressions. This situation was much more exciting than the battle in the beast-fighting arena just now. Cough, cough. The sound of violent coughing suddenly came from the pile of broken carriages. Then there was a crash sound. A young man rushed out of the wooden carriage covering his body and stood up. At this moment, one could see that his face and body were covered with the cat beast's flesh and blood, as well as redwood dregs. This young man had short hair. He was wearing a white robe made of high-quality animal skin. There were also exquisite decorative items on his body. One look and one could tell that he was a rich man. After this young man stood up, he shook his head and wiped his eyes. After a long time, he turned around. At this moment, there were 2 young women lying at the feet of this young man. The 2 women were naked. They were also hit by the cat beast's flesh and blood and were now in a coma. The young man who came back to his senses looked at Yang Tian, who was still standing in the same place. The light in his eyes became colder and colder. Men, kill him. The young man looked at Yang Tian and said coldly. Who? As soon as the young man's voice fell, a big man wearing black iron armor flashed out and stood in front of Yang Tian. Bah! Yang Tian spat and spat a piece of flesh and blood that splashed at the corner of his mouth onto the ground. To the big man in black armor in front of him, Yang Tian's behavior was an insult and provocation. Chapter 192. Because of the translator, Yang Tian could naturally understand the young man's words. Yang Tian didn't want to cause trouble, but he had to take care of this matter. If he didn't teach this young man a lesson, it would go against his will. The path of the strong was about following one's heart. The man in black iron armor in front of him, from Yang Tian's aura, was equivalent to a human level 8 warrior. In the entire universe, he was just a quasi-star warrior. Huff, the man misunderstood Yang Tian's insulting behavior and was stunned. Then he angrily took a step forward and punched at Yang Tian's head. The fist rubbed against the air and made a sharp whistling sound. Although this burly man had a large build and was wearing heavy black iron armor, his movements were extremely nimble and fast. Seeing the fast fist coming, Yang Tian didn't dodge. Peng! Yang Tian lowered his head, causing his forehead to collide with the man's fist. Almost at the same time, a crack sound was heard. See, the man's arm was hit by Yang Tian's forehead and he was forced to take a few steps back. Suddenly, he gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. One of his arms that was clenched into a fist was no longer able to exert strength and hung down. Seeing that his expert guard was easily defeated by Yang Tian, the young man couldn't help but be stunned. Then he looked around as if he didn't know what to do. When the young man was at a loss, Yang Tian flashed in front of him. When he came back to his senses, he found that he was actually lifted up by Yang Tian. The young man struggled hard, but it was no use at all. Don't kill me." Seeing Yang Tian's cold eyes, the young man was horrified and kept begging for mercy. Yang Tian didn't mean to kill this person at all. He held the young man with one hand and took out a photo from his trouser pocket with the other. "Have you seen this person?" Placing the photo in front of the young man, Yang Tian asked in a not-so-fluent universal language. It was a photo of Qin Jingyang. In the photo, Qin Jingyang looked like an old man. The young man looked at it seriously and shook his head. "I have never seen him before." Yang Tian had no choice but to put the young man down. Then, Yang Tian turned around and walked along the broad path towards the palace-like buildings that were densely packed with Hela people. Yang Tian knew that the ones who had the most information would always be the rulers, not the ignorant commoners. If he went there, he would definitely be able to obtain the information he needed. Looking at Yang Tian's back, a look of resentment appeared in the young man's eyes. He waved his hand to call over the injured black-armored man and whispered a few words in his ear. The black-armored man endured the pain in his heart and nodded. Soon after, the burly man disappeared into the crowd in a few flashes. After Yang Tian left, the people who were watching the show immediately dispersed. What happened just now would be a topic that they would talk about for a long time. Yang Tian walked along the path very slowly. It was his first time coming to a human settlement on a foreign planet. Many things here made him very curious. After walking out of the circle of stone houses where the commoners lived, there weren't many people on the path. On both sides of the path, that was more than 10 meters wide and paved with stone slabs, there were some small stone houses. Most of these stone houses were shops. This was a planet in the Death Starfield. Almost all the people who lived here were the descendants of exiles. In this starfield that was sealed off by the outside world, resources were scarce. Most of the things sold in the shops were handmade trinkets, all kinds of animal skins, clothes and decorations made of animal skins, iron products, all kinds of weapons, local specialties, and so on. The humans in this world seemed to have it harder than the humans on Earth. Clang, clang, Yang Tian walked for a few miles. From a stone house in front of him came the sound of knocking iron tools. Outside this stone house, there was a big wind banner made of animal skins. There were no words written on it. Instead, the shape of a sword and a saber was rusted with thick black lines. As soon as the people outside saw this wind banner, they knew that this was a shop that specialized in making weapons. As a warrior from Earth, he was very fond of weapons. Seeing that this was a weapon shop, Yang Tian decided to go in and have a look. Yang Tian quickened his pace and soon arrived at the door of this handmade weapon shop. At the door of this stone house, there was a wooden weapon rack. There were many weapons on it. There were long knives, short knives, machetes, axes, hooks, spikes. There were many kinds of weapons. However, there was only one weapon for each kind. In the shop, there was a middle-aged man with a bare upper body and a piece of animal skin around his waist. This person's hair was messy and his body was drenched in sweat, making him look glossy and shiny. He held a black iron hammer in his right hand and an iron clamp with a wooden handle in his left hand. He was holding a piece of red-hot iron and was constantly hammering it. In front of this man there was a 1-meter-tall stove. It was unknown what was burning in the stove. It was red and produced an extremely high temperature. Yang Tian stood outside the shop and felt the waves of heat coming from inside. Clang, clang, Yang Tian came to the door of the shop. The middle-aged man just turned his head and glanced at Yang Tian. Then, he continued with his unfinished work. The whole shop was still filled with the monotonous knocking sound. Yang Tian came to the weapon rack and casually picked up a long knife to look at in his hand. This knife was about 1.2 meters long. The handle was 15 centimeters long and the blade was 7 to 8 centimeters wide. It was very heavy, at least 300 pounds. Such a heavy knife was not something an ordinary person could use. If one was not strong enough, it would be very difficult to wield this knife, let alone use it to fight. Yang Tian was very curious. Which knife was better, such a weapon or his own YT elemental alloy knife? Seeing Yang Tian pull out a bright knife, the middle-aged man who was making weapons finally stopped. Yang Tian held his own knife in one hand and the black knife from the weapon rack in the other. He weighed the weight of the two knives. Through comparison, Yang Tian came to a conclusion. The density of this black weapon's material was not as high as his sabers. However, a metal's hardness was not determined by its density. Gold was dense but very soft. Knives made of steel could cut it. What are you doing? After the middle-aged man came out of the shop, he frowned and asked. Yang Tian smiled and said, I want to see if my weapon is better, or your weapon is better. Of course mine is better. If you don't believe me, you can try. The middle-aged man crossed his arms and said with some unwillingness, Then your knife is broken. What about it? Yang Tian asked again. The middle-aged man also laughed. Of course you will pay. I didn't ask you to try. Yang Tian was speechless. He originally wanted to try without spending money. He did not expect that the middle-aged man would not be fooled, so he could only forget about it. Seeing Yang Tian put the knife he made back on the weapon rack, the middle-aged man shook his head. Okay. You can try. If my knife is not as good as yours, you don't have to pay. Yang Tian laughed and took back the black knife. Ping! Yang Tian held the knife with both hands and clashed the two knives. The result of the collision of the two knives surprised Yang Tian because a bean-sized gap appeared on his YT elemental alloy knife. The same happened on the black knife. In terms of strength, the two sabers were actually on par with each other. Chapter 193. Yang Tian's knife was made using high-tech methods. Whether it was the configuration of the alloy material or the refining process, it was extremely precise. However, this black knife was made purely by hand. Handmade definitely could not be compared to scientific refining method. Then, it was the problem of the material. The material used for this black knife was at least comparable to the YT elemental alloy in terms of hardness. More importantly, in terms of the same material volume, this black metal was lighter. Seeing this result, the middle-aged man proudly said, How is it? My knife is not bad, right? Yang Tian shook his head. It's so. About the same as my knife. Don't tell me. That's your ability? Ha ha ha. After Yang Tian finished speaking, the middle-aged man laughed loudly. Yang Tian looked at the middle-aged man and smiled without saying a word. The weapons outside are all the cheapest. If you want better ones, please come inside. But the weapons inside are not cheap. The middle-aged man laughed and said proudly. Yang Tian had just arrived here and naturally had no money on him. Although he could not buy it, it was good to take a look and understand. So, he nodded at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man smiled and made a gesture of invitation to Yang Tian. Yang Tian glanced at the person who had been following him not far away and smiled slightly. Then, he followed the middle-aged man into the shop. This stone house was very simple and had a total of 3 rooms. The outermost room was the middle-aged man's workshop. There were 2 rooms inside, one was the bedroom and the other was the kitchen and weapon showroom. The reason why Yang Tian could see it was because the 2 rooms inside had no doors. Only the shop outside had a broken wooden door. Aren't you afraid that the things outside will be lost? When the middle-aged man brought Yang Tian into the weapon showroom and kitchen, Yang Tian reminded him. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Our tribe's punishment is very strict. If you steal something, your hands will be cut off. No one dares to steal." Yang Tian smiled and did not comment on this. If the punishment here was extremely strict, the young man he met before would not have let his beast fly in a crowded place. It was very likely that the system here was useful for the commoners, but for the nobles it was just a piece of paper. In this weapon showroom and kitchen, more than half of the space was occupied by hanging smoked meat. There was also a large vat of food inside, filled with red oval-shaped granules. They were similar to the grains eaten by humans on Earth, but much larger. There was plenty of food, which meant that the middle-aged man was living a good life. The weapons here only took up a small part of the space. On one side of the wall there was a weapon rack about 5 meters long. On the weapon rack there was a curved saber about 1.5 meters long and 5 centimeters wide. It immediately attracted Yang Tian's attention, not only because of the appearance of the saber, but also because the body of the saber was red and engraved with strange runes. The blade was very shiny, as if it had been smeared with oil. This saber. Yang Tian pointed at the red saber and said with great interest. Because of the existence of this saber, Yang Tian ignored the other sabers made of black metal. Seeing Yang Tian's shining eyes, the middle-aged man quickly shook his head and said, "I'm not selling this saber." The middle-aged man said very firmly. "Why?" Yang Tian asked curiously. After asking this question, Yang Tian was prepared to listen to the middle-aged man use various reasons to reject him. For example, this saber was passed down from his ancestors, it was the treasure of the shop, or it was a relic of a relative, and he could not bear to sell it, etc. The middle-aged man also gave a reason, but his reason made Yang Tian very surprised. "You can't use this saber." This was the reason why the middle-aged man told Yang Tian. "Why?" Yang Tian asked again. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "You can try it. If you can use it, I'll sell it to you at a low price. You should know that in our Hela tribe, no one can use it. This is a treasured saber, otherwise it would have been snatched away long ago." The middle-aged man said very confidently, which made Yang Tian even more curious. This saber was longer and wider than the saber Yang Tian was using now, but it was just what Yang Tian wanted. There were countless materials in the universe, and there were countless materials better than YT elemental alloy. The weapons made of these materials would be better. At the same time, in addition to the problem of the material, the use of strange methods on the weapon to enhance the weapon's destructive power was also an important reason why Yang Tian wanted to change weapons. For example, this red saber was covered with strange runes. This pattern did not seem to make the saber more beautiful, but it obviously had its use. "Okay. Then I'll give it a try." Yang Tian smiled and said. The middle-aged man stepped aside, crossed his arms, and looked at Yang Tian with a smile. There was a trace of contempt in his smile. He was not looking down on Yang Tian, but he was full of disdain for anyone who wanted to use this saber. Yang Tian took off his backpack and put it aside. At this moment, the little blue dragon opened its eyes wide and looked curiously at Yang Tian and the red saber through the gap in the backpack. Yang Tian put his hand on the saber's handle, which was more than 20 centimeters long, and wanted to pick up the saber from the weapon rack. Unexpectedly, this saber was extremely heavy. This surprised Yang Tian. The strength he used just now was enough to lift 300 to 400 kilograms, but this saber did not move at all. Yang Tian could not help but frown. Seeing Yang Tian's frown, the middle-aged man laughed. Yang Tian increased his strength, but it did not work. He increased it again. In the end, Yang Tian could only use his hands, but it still did not work. This strange saber seemed to be glued to the weapon rack. You can't do it, right? The middle-aged man saw that Yang Tian could not lift the saber with both hands and laughed. Yang Tian did not answer and let go of his hands. At this moment, the middle-aged man stepped forward, held the saber's handle with one hand, and took the red saber from the weapon rack, looking very relaxed. This situation made Yang Tian very surprised. Could this person in front of him be a hidden master? This saber is spiritual. No one can use it except me. Unfortunately, I can't become a warrior. It's a waste to leave this saber with me, the middle-aged man said as he flicked his finger on the saber's body. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The saber trembled and made a dragon-like sound. What's its name? Yang Tian opened his eyes wide and asked. It's called 15. The middle-aged man replied. 15? What a strange name. Squeak, squeak, squeak. At this moment, the little blue dragon suddenly screamed and rushed out of Yang Tian's backpack. Its voice was full of anger. When the middle-aged man saw the little blue dragon come out, he was shocked and the saber in his hand almost fell to the ground. Xiao Long, what's going on? Yang Tian looked at the little blue dragon and wondered. He understood that there must be a reason why the little blue dragon came out of the backpack angrily. Chapter 194. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The little blue dragon spoke very anxiously. It told Yang Tian that it felt the blood of its kind on this saber. This was a saber that had slaughtered a dragon. Yang Tian looked at the saber in the middle-aged man's hand and opened his eyes wide. This dragon. The middle-aged man stared at the little blue dragon and was stunned for a long time before he stammered and made a sound from his throat. And Yang Tian nodded. It's an azure dragon. After the little blue dragon told Yang Tian what it knew, it went back into the backpack. Soon Yang Tian frowned, because he found that something was wrong. In this universe, there was no such thing as a dragon. Previously, Yuyang Nancy, Yuyang Xingchen, and the people of Zichen Empire all called the little blue dragon Star Beast. Dragon, this name came from Earth. Moreover, when this middle-aged man said the word dragon, it was very similar to the pronunciation of humans on Earth. How do you know that it's a dragon? Yang Tian looked at the middle-aged man in front of him and asked. The middle-aged man said, This is what my father told me. Such a simple sentence answered Yang Tian's question. Yang Tian didn't ask too much. He looked at the saber in the middle-aged man's hand. I still want to try. When he said this, Yang Tian's eyes were filled with determination. This saber called 15 was definitely a good saber. If he could have it, Yang Tian's fighting strength would increase by a lot. Seeing Yang Tian's determined look, the middle-aged man laughed. With a chi sound, he inserted the saber in his hand into the gap between the stone slabs on the ground and said, Then you can slowly try it here. When you can use it, we'll talk about the price. Alright. Yang Tian nodded. He had already tried, and it was impossible to use this saber with just the strength of his physical body. Or perhaps this saber had not been subdued by Yang Tian and was not convinced, or perhaps there was some other reason. The middle-aged man went out, and Yang Tian decided to try again with the power of his Dragon Balls. Clang! 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 Outside, the sound of the middle-aged man hitting the black iron block rang out again. Yang Tian stepped forward and held the hilt of 15's blade. He circulated the power of the dragon pearl in his body and let the power enter the blade. If it were Yang Tian's own YT alloy blade, it would start buzzing when Yang Tian infused it with the power of the Dragon Balls. This was not because the saber was sentient, but because the saber was unable to withstand the powerful force and was trembling. What about this saber? Yang Tian poured his power into it, but it was like a stone sinking into the sea. There was no reaction at all. At the same time, Yang Tian also felt that this saber was absorbing his power, and it had a very strong sense of hunger. It was like a human who had not drunk water for a long time in the desert, and after seeing water, he urgently wanted to drink it. There was indeed something wrong with this saber. During the process of transferring energy, Yang Tian exerted his strength, trying to lift the blade. Hiss! Yang Tian gritted his teeth, took a deep breath, and used his greatest strength. Chi! The heavy blade made a grinding sound with the stone slabs on the ground. This saber really moved. It was slowly pulled out by Yang Tian. Yang Tian's guess was right. This saber needed to be infused with power to be used. In the process of pulling out the saber, Yang Tian felt that the more power he infused, the lighter the saber became. Buzz! Suddenly, the saber was pulled out of the ground by Yang Tian, and it let out a dragon's roar. Clang! At this time, the middle-aged man turned his head and saw Yang Tian pull out the saber from the ground and hit the black iron block with a hammer. He was stunned, and his eyes were full of disbelief. Hee hee! Yang Tian laughed. He found that the more power this saber absorbed, the lighter it became. However, the amount of energy required for this saber was simply too terrifying. Fortunately, when he came here, Yang Tian found a huge blue crystal that absorbed a lot of power. Otherwise, he would not have been able to hold on. The Dragon Ball in his body was like a warehouse of power. It usually stored a lot of power, and when he needed it, he could take it out and use it. Hiss! A few minutes later, Yang Tian held the saber with both hands and waved it a few times. A few red lines appeared in the air. Yang Tian felt that the weight of this saber was only a little heavier than the original saber, and it was very suitable for his current strength. Moreover, Yang Tian also found that at this time, there was no need to transfer power into this saber. He finally succeeded. Yang Tian walked out with the saber and came in front of the middle-aged man. He looked at the middle-aged man with a smile on his face. The middle-aged man looked at the saber in Yang Tian's hand reluctantly, shook his head and said, "If you can afford 1,000 Hella dollars, you can take it away." This race was called the Hella race, and the currency they used was also called Hella dollars. In the circulation of goods, in addition to bartering, coins were also needed. Hella dollars. I don't have any. Yang Tian heard the man talk about money and said helplessly, "It's okay if you don't have money. You can exchange it with something." The middle-aged man looked at Yang Tian's clothes and knew that Yang Tian had just arrived on this planet. It was normal that he did not have any Hella dollars. However, it was people like Yang Tian who had a lot of good things on them. Exchange with something? Yang Tian scratched his head, took off the YT elemental alloy saber from his waist, and said to the middle-aged man, "Is this saber okay?" The middle-aged man laughed. "Your saber is not as good as mine." As he spoke, he took the red saber from Yang Tian's hand. Yang Tian still had 2 daggers on him, but these 2 daggers were left behind by Yang Tian's grandfather. Yang Tian naturally would not take them out to exchange for a saber, so he had to open his backpack. The little blue dragon came out again. The middle-aged man looked at the little blue dragon, rolled his eyes, and said to Yang Tian, "If you use this little thing to exchange with me, that's fine too." Yang Tian did not even think about it and shook his head. The little blue dragon was no different from a relative to Yang Tian. Soon, Yang Tian took out the things in his backpack. The backpack was full of Yang Tian's daily necessities, but the middle-aged man was not interested at all. I'd better go earn money? Yang Tian saw that the middle-aged man was not interested in his things, so he said helplessly in the universal language that he was getting more and more familiar with. Wait a minute. As Yang Tian was packing up, the middle-aged man suddenly called out. Yang Tian looked up at the middle-aged man in confusion. The middle-aged man opened his eyes wide, slowly squatted down, and picked up a small blue crystal from one of the old clothes that Yang Tian took out. Stellar crystal. The middle-aged man put the small blue crystal in the palm of his hand, looked at it carefully, and said in surprise. It turned out that the blue crystal that Yang Tian accidentally found was the stellar crystal that Yang Nancy mentioned before. It was a natural mineral that could be directly absorbed by humans and used for cultivation. After Yang Tian knew that the blue crystal was the stellar crystal, he did not find it strange because he had already guessed it, but he did not confirm it. Chapter 195. Seeing the middle-aged man's expression, Yang Tian asked with a smile, "This, can I exchange it for your saber?" "Of course." The middle-aged man was still looking at the stellar crystal in his hand and nodded without blinking. At this moment, the stellar crystal had already melted in the middle-aged man's hand and seeped into his skin. This middle-aged man didn't have the aura of an expert. It seemed like the stellar crystal was also useful for ordinary humans. Just like the energy of beast cores, it could strengthen the human body. Actually, there was nothing strange about this. Everything in the universe was a body of energy. Planets were bodies of energy, all kinds of materials were bodies of energy, and humans were bodies of energy as well. It was just that this stellar crystal had a direct, strengthening effect on living things. It was very mysterious, but to humans it was very precious. How much of this thing is enough? Yang Tian heard the middle-aged man's answer and asked again. The middle-aged man came back to his senses. After thinking for a while, he gestured at Yang Tian with his fist. What he meant was that as long as he had a fist-sized stellar crystal, he would be able to exchange it for the magical saber in his hand. Unfortunately, Yang Tian had absorbed most of the stellar crystals in his backpack on the way here. The energy of these stellar crystals had all been converted into energy for the Dragon Ball and stored in Yang Tian's Dragon Ball space. Who knew how many more stellar crystals there were in that place? Yang Tian thought for a while, and didn't plan on going back. For him, now wasn't the time he needed it the most. Perhaps one day Yang Tian thought like this, then said to the middle-aged man, "Stellar crystals. I don't have any. Better earn some money to exchange for it." For someone with great power, earning money was a very easy thing to do. In this world, hunting exotic beasts was the best way. Before coming here, the little blue dragon had warned Yang Tian that there was a powerful exotic beast not far from here. Yang Tian didn't believe that the people here weren't threatened by the exotic beast. "I want to earn a lot of money. Is there any way?" Yang Tian looked at the knife in the middle-aged man's hand again and asked. For Yang Tian, this saber was a must-have item. It should be known that in less than half an hour, the energy that Yang Tian had poured into this saber was equivalent to the energy that he had absorbed during this period of time. If he did not obtain this saber, then all of this energy would have been wasted. Hearing Yang Tian's question, the middle-aged man thought for a while before pointing outside and said, "Over there, the nobles have already offered a reward for killing 3 powerful beasts. If you can solve this problem for our Hela tribe, not to mention money, I will give you this saber. How about it?" As soon as the middle-aged man said this, his image in Yang Tian's eyes instantly improved. "Why? Strange beasts. It's none of your business?" Yang Tian asked. "Hee." The middle-aged man laughed and said, "How is it none of my business? It has been hundreds of years. Because of those 3 strange beasts, no less than 100,000 people of our Hela tribe have died. Most of them are like me, living here peacefully. You definitely haven't seen that kind of tragedy." We have already built this city several times. Don't you have powerful people in your tribe? Yang Tian asked again. We do have powerful people, the middle-aged man said, but those powerful people are nobles. They live a good life. Why would they risk their lives to fight the exotic beasts? Every time the exotic beasts get angry, the ones who die are us. It turned out that the powerful people in this world cherish their lives as much as the high-level warriors on Earth. Yang Tian thought to himself. Don't worry. I will kill those 3 exotic beasts. Yang Tian promised. The middle-aged man also said, Good. I will take this saber and wait for your return. Yang Tian left the small shop, carried his backpack and continued walking along the main road. In front of him was the residence of the nobles of the Hela tribe. When Yang Tian left, a man in black entered the shop. Xiaolong, was that saber really stained with dragon blood? After leaving the small weapon shop and walking far away, Yang Tian turned his head and asked the little blue dragon hiding in his backpack. Squeak, squeak. The little blue dragon answered with certainty. On the saber, there was more than one dragon's bloody aura. The little blue dragon answered. Yang Tian said again, Then after I get that saber, do I have to find a way to destroy it? This was a question that Yang Tian was very concerned about. Yang Tian also didn't know why the little blue dragon could still feel the bloody aura of its kind from the saber after so long. If the little blue dragon didn't agree, Yang Tian would destroy the saber that killed dragons. Squeak, squeak. The little blue dragon answered. It didn't mind. Yang Tian was finally relieved. Soon, Yang Tian came to the end of the main road, in front of a dense cluster of buildings. The buildings in front of him were like the king's palaces in fairy tales. From the appearance of the buildings, they were much better looking and more imposing than simple stone houses. A wide winding mountain road extended from the end of the main road. On this road, there were many beast-drawn carriages like the one the young man rode before. These carriages were the tools of the Hela tribe's nobles. This was not a place where commoners should come. At the end of the main road, on the mountain road, there were people guarding it. Stop! When Yang Tian was about to go up the mountain road, 2 guards wearing black iron armor blocked in front of Yang Tian. One of them shouted coldly. Yang Tian stopped and looked at the 2 with a frown. You can't go up. The other person looked at Yang Tian and said with a gloomy face. Why? Yang Tian asked with a smile. Everyone here is the nobles of the Hela tribe. You are an outsider. You are not qualified to enter. The other person replied. Yang Tian looked up at the palace-like buildings in front of him and sneered. What if I must go in? As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, dozens of Hela warriors wearing black iron armor flashed out and surrounded Yang Tian. Seeing such a situation, Yang Tian said helplessly, Okay. I will look for your leader. You put a bounty to kill 3 exotic beasts. I want to make money. After Yang Tian finished speaking, the dozens of black-armored warriors surrounding Yang Tian widened their eyes at the same time. You don't believe me? Yang Tian asked with a smile. One of the black-armored warriors looked at Yang Tian again and said, Wait a moment. I will go up and report. Yang Tian nodded. About 10 minutes later, the black-armored warrior returned and said to Yang Tian, Our priest, Lord Hela, wants to see you. Hela tribe? Hela tribe? Such a strange name. Yang Tian smiled and nodded. He followed behind the black-armored warrior who led the way. The black-armored warrior moved very fast. It was as if he was running on the winding mountain road. This person was afraid that Yang Tian could not keep up, so he looked back from time to time. But what surprised him was that Yang Tian was still following behind him. His face was not red and he was not out of breath. He seemed very relaxed. Chapter 196. After following the man in black for a few minutes, they arrived at a building that looked like an ancient castle at the highest point. This ancient castle was built with red boulders, and it looked simple yet grand. There were 2 tall guards in black metal armor and wielding long swords at the entrance. "Please enter." After arriving at the entrance, the man in black armor who was leading the way gestured for Yang Tian to enter. Yang Tian walked in with large strides. The interior of this ancient stone castle was very dim, but there was a pleasant fragrance. Yang Tian couldn't help but frown when he caught a whiff of this scent. He could clearly feel that this scent would make his mind hazy. Although it wasn't very serious, it was very uncomfortable for Yang Tian, who had to stay awake at all times. After walking a few dozen meters in the dim light, a fire appeared in front of him. Yang Tian quickened his pace and quickly arrived at the most spacious part of the ancient castle. In this spacious interior, there was a huge bonfire with a pile of red firewood burning. What was strange was that there wasn't much smoke when the firewood was burning. A beautiful woman was sitting beside the bonfire. She looked like she was in her early 20s. Under the light of the fire, her skin looked very bright and rosy, and she had a head of orange curly hair. Just like Qin Jingyang, Yang Tian felt that although this woman wasn't the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, she was the most sexy woman. This woman was the priest of the Hela tribe, He Gula. She was a woman with a high status in the Hela tribe. There was a very narrow circle of white beast fur around He Gula's perky breasts, as well as around her waist. When Yang Tian arrived, she was in an elegant posture with a smile on her face that was very seductive to men. "I heard that you can kill those 3 mutated beasts for my tribe?" When Yang Tian stopped beside the bonfire, He Gula stood up and pulled out her orange curly hair. She looked at Yang Tian and asked with a smile. He Gula's language had a dialect accent. Yang Tian thought for a while before he understood what He Gula was saying. Yang Tian nodded. "Why should I?" He Gula licked her red lips and said plainly. Although this woman's voice and actions were very seductive, a man with a weak will wouldn't be able to resist her. "Why should I?" Yang Tian smiled. "I just want to know what reward I can get." He. He Gula laughed when he heard Yang Tian's words. A bell-like laughter rang out. Was it very funny? Yang Tian was a little unhappy. Looking at Yang Tian's frown, He Gulabi was surprised, but he quickly stopped laughing. He stared at Yang Tian and smiled. "If you can help my people get rid of those 3 exotic beasts, I will give myself to you. How about it?" As He Gula said that, she began to walk toward Yang Tian. Under the light of the fire, one could see that He Gula's legs kept crossing each other as she walked. Even with Yang Tian's strong will, he was still a little thirsty. At this time, Yang Tian was surprised to find that there was a faint energy fluctuation on He Gula's body. This energy could clearly stimulate a man's instincts. Yang Tian was a man, so he was confused for a moment. But he quickly regained his senses. Yang Tian's power had surpassed Qin Jingyang's by a lot. Qin Jingyang could be seduced, but Yang Tian would not. He Gula grasped this opportunity. Seeing that Yang Tian was already mesmerized by him, he could not help sneering and said indifferently, "Men." Whoosh. Before she could finish her sentence, 2 men in black appeared behind Yang Tian. When they moved, there was a whistling sound. Actually, Yang Tian had already noticed the presence of these 2. At this time, he narrowed his eyes. Hiss! There was a flash of white light. These 2 men in black were also masters. They were at least as powerful as Meteor Star Warriors, which was equivalent to level 9 martial artists. Their speed was very fast. When they suddenly attacked, they did not attack Yang Tian's vital point. Instead, they wanted to capture Yang Tian. Earlier, Qin Jingyang had fallen for this trick. However, when they reached Yang Tian's back at an extremely fast speed and stretched out their hands to restrain Yang Tian, their hands could only catch Yang Tian's afterimage. Then, a white light lit up in front of them. When the 2 of them finally reacted, Yang Tian was already more than 10 meters away from them. Crack! Crack! Then, 2 sounds came from the bodies of the 2 men in black. Almost at the same time, they felt a chill in their chests. It turned out that the metal buttons on their chest armor had cracked open. The armor made of thin black metal had loosened and was slanted to their abdomens. Clap, clap. Seeing this, Higula clapped her hands and looked at Yang Tian with admiration. Yang Tian responded with a confident smile. From the beginning to the end, the two men in black did not see how Yang Tian attacked. At this time, they could not help but be shocked. If Yang Tian did not use the sword to split open the metal buttons on their chest armor, but their necks, you can leave now. Higula looked at the two men in black who were stunned and said calmly. The two of them bowed to Higula and disappeared into the darkness as if they had never appeared. Yang Tian sat down on the red wooden stool where Higula was sitting and put down the backpack on his shoulder. Carrying a backpack in battle affected Yang Tian's speed. Higula still walked elegantly and seductively in front of Yang Tian. The fragrance on her body was very strong. When she was less than a meter away from Yang Tian could not help but raise his hand and rub his nose. I believe you now. You have a very high chance of killing those 3 exotic beasts. As Higula spoke, she reached out and wanted to put her hand on Yang Tian's shoulder. Yang Tian raised his sword and blocked Higula's hand with the hilt. He smiled and said, "Let's talk about the 3 exotic beasts and the reward first." Yang Tian said this sentence very fluently. Higula smiled and retracted her hand. She smiled and said, "Didn't I say just now? The reward is me. Don't you men all want me?" Yang Tian said disdainfully, "Sorry. I'm not interested in you." Hearing Yang Tian say this, Higula's aura suddenly changed. She was very seductive before, but suddenly she became like a proper woman. She said to Yang Tian very seriously, "All right? If you can kill those 3 exotic beasts, my tribe will give you 1,000,000 Hela dollars and make you an elder of the Hela tribe." Yang Tian did not plan to stay here. He had no interest in money or status here. He took out Qin Jingyang's photo and handed it to Higula. "I want the money and help me find this person and the entrance to the underground pyramid." Yang Tian's conditions were mentioned by Higula without even thinking. She nodded and said, "Okay." Chapter 197. After Higula finished her discussion with Yang Tian, she ordered plainly without even turning her head, "Men, bring me my beast diagram." "Yes." A maid who was hiding in the dark replied. Yang Tian noticed that the woman in front of him liked to be in a dimly lit environment, even her body was hidden in the dark. Yang Tian sensed that there were at least 12 people in the dark corners of the room. 2 of them were the black-clothed guards who wanted to capture Yang Tian earlier. After instructing her subordinates to retrieve the beast diagram, Higula sat down beside Yang Tian. She was very close to Yang Tian, her body almost touching Yang Tian. When she sat down, she even purposely rubbed her chest against Yang Tian. This kind of small action wasn't threatening, so Yang Tian didn't avoid it. After sitting beside Yang Tian, Higula, who was still serious earlier, glanced at Yang Tian with a flirtatious gaze. There was even a hint of resentment in her eyes. Although Yang Tian saw it, he didn't react. He knew that this was just Higula's habitual action. It was also one of her methods as a woman. Yang Tian already felt that he had let Qin Fei down after what happened with Yang Nancy. Now, he didn't want to provoke another woman. Thus, he moved to the side, maintaining his distance from Higula. Although the room was very big, there was a fire burning, so the temperature in the room was still very high. Yang Tian felt that the fragrance coming from Higula's body was getting stronger and stronger. Previously, Higula used this method to deal with Yang Tian. Now that Yang Tian smelled this pleasant fragrance, he was even more alert. After sitting down beside Yang Tian, Higula looked at Yang Tian with a smile, making Yang Tian feel even more uncomfortable. Luckily, one of Higula's maids quickly brought over the beast diagram that Higula mentioned. Higula's maids were dressed much more tightly than Higula's. They were wearing a short white shirt and a short skirt made from beast fur. The maid immediately retreated into the darkness after bringing over the strange beast diagram of Higula. It was obvious at a glance that this beast map was made from beast skin. There was also an exquisite scroll with engravings on it. It looked very precious, giving Yang Tian the feeling of a treasure map. After receiving the beast diagram, Higula opened it in front of Yang Tian. Yang Tian turned his head and watched curiously. Although this picture was made of animal skin, it was white and shiny. The material was like a thick cotton cloth. On the back of the picture, one could see fine fur. The beast diagram was unfurled. It was a diagram made up of red lines. Every diagram was a strange-looking beast. The drawing method was the same as the simple strokes used by humans, using simple lines to outline the shape of the beast. It was very vivid. Beside each picture, there were vertical rows of text descriptions. Yang Tian didn't recognize the words on it, so he could only wait for Higula's explanation. After this beast diagram was unfurled, it was actually 3 meters long. There were more than 10 types of beasts drawn on it. After looking at it, Higula pointed at one of the beast diagrams and said to Yang Tian, "This is a sand beast. It likes to live in soft sand. Every time it goes to a place, it will turn its surroundings into a sand environment. It usually hides underground and attacks humans or beasts. This is the weakest of the 3 beasts. However, because it lives underground, it can quickly dive underground when it encounters danger. It is very difficult to kill it." When Higula was explaining to Yang Tian, he purposely spoke slowly, afraid that Yang Tian wouldn't understand. This sand beast, in Yang Tian's eyes, looked like a sandworm. Higula told him that this sand beast was about 50 meters long and 3 meters in diameter. Its entire body was covered in hard scales, and its abdomen had 2 rows of densely packed legs. When it attacked other creatures, it could spit out red sand fog, shrouding its opponent in sand fog. Although this sand fog was mainly made up of tiny red sand, it contained anesthetic toxins. Once an ordinary human breathed in this sand fog, they would quickly fall unconscious and be dragged underground by the sand beast to eat them. This beast was also a tribute from the Hila tribe. It had developed a kind of conditioned reflex. Wherever it was active, it had to eat more than 10,000 kilograms of meat every month. Otherwise, it would burrow into the city from underground and directly destroy the houses that the Hila tribe built with great difficulty. The second powerful beast was one that Yang Tian had seen before. It looked like a Tyrannosaurus rex. This beast's body was extremely huge. According to Higula, when it walked or ran, its head was 50 meters above the ground. Its body, including its tail, was about 80 meters long. It could spit fire, and its body was also covered in hard scales. This Tyrannosaurus rex was many times bigger than the one Yang Tian saw before. This was a true giant. The Hila tribe called it Fire Beast, because it could spit out high-temperature flames. When this beast went berserk, it would cause great harm to humans. According to Higula, in the past 100 years, tens of thousands of humans had died in the mouth of this beast. The third beast was one that Yang Tian was very familiar with. It was the one that Yang Tian had seen before. It was a beast that looked like the scarlet-feathered eagle. Its body was also extremely huge. This beast was the most difficult to deal with because it could fly in the sky. Don't underestimate this beast. Its destructive power was even more terrifying than the Tyrannosaurus rex. Not only would it destroy human buildings, it would also attack humans directly. It would kill humans to vent its anger. For the first 2 beasts, Higula could still use his special spiritual power to calm them down. But for this beast, Higula couldn't do anything. If it went berserk, Higula could only hide underground and wait for it to vent its anger before leaving. The number of humans that died in the mouth and claws of this Ing beast was even greater. The He-La tribe called this Ing beast Berserk Beast. After He-Gu-La finished talking about the 3 Ultra Beasts, he told Yang Tian the locations of the 3 Ultra Beasts. Yang Tian thought for a while. These 3 beasts weren't difficult to deal with for him. For example, the Ing beast could be dealt with by the little blue dragon. As for the 2 on the ground, Yang Tian planned to use them as practice. However, Yang Tian didn't underestimate these 3 beasts. As for how to deal with them, he would only know after observing them on the ground. Alright, I got it. I'm leaving. After knowing what he wanted to know, Yang Tian stood up, picked up his backpack, and prepared to leave. Seeing that Yang Tian was about to leave, He-Gu-La said with a smile, I still don't know your name. Yang Tian smiled and said, My name is Yang Tian. Yang Tian, you know that I spent a lot of effort on these 3 beasts. Don't you know that other than these 3 beasts, there will be additional rewards? As He-Gu-La spoke, he winked at Yang Tian. Yang Tian knew what He-Gu-La meant. After smiling, he turned and left. Send someone to follow him. Take a look. After Yang Tian left, the smile on He-Gu-La's face disappeared. He called a man in black and instructed. Chapter 198. If it was someone else, they would definitely choose the weakest gravel beast to attack. However, Yang Tian was different. He wanted to kill the most powerful eagle beast first, which was the Berserk beast that the Hela tribe referred to. After leaving the Hela tribe's aristocrats' residence, Yang Tian quickly ran towards the north. The little blue dragon had already come out of the backpack and was lying on Yang Tian's shoulder with a pair of lively big eyes. Behind Yang Tian, the 4 men in black were chasing after Yang Tian at their fastest speed. Yang Tian already knew that there would be people following behind him, so he did not mind. It was good that there were people following him. The place where the exotic beasts lived would always be advantageous to them. The north of the Hela tribe was dry and full of red mountains. They were like still waves, extending into the distance in circles. Each mountain was taller than the other. The eagle beast that could fly built its nest in this continuous mountain range. There was already a road that led to the eagle's nest because every 2 months or so, the Hela tribe would send hundreds of people to contribute food to the eagle beast. This was a true case of nurturing a tiger will only invite calamity. In the past 100 years, it was unknown how much meat went into the stomach of the eagle beast. Originally, it could hunt by itself. However, it was probably too hungry and attacked the humans a few times. Hence, the humans were afraid and would send large amounts of food to it every once in a while. After a long time, the eagle beast developed a habit. If it felt that the humans should send food but did not send it, it would get angry and attack the human settlement. Other than this eagle beast, the other 2 exotic beasts were the same. The 3 exotic beasts were not too far away from the Hela tribe. Yang Tian followed the route and walked for more than 200 kilometers before finally reaching the place. There was no day or night on the Crimson Flame planet. The humans' work and rest schedule were not fixed. Many exotic beasts were the same. At this time, Yang Tian was standing on top of a small hill. In the valley in front of him was the eagle beast's nest. Under Yang Tian's feet, which was the bottom of the hill, were piles of various beast bones. This was the place where the Hela tribe placed their meat. Every time they paid tribute, the Hela tribe would bring more than 10,000 pounds of meat and throw it all at the bottom of the hill. It was not easy for humans to survive in this world. There was a lack of food and the 3 exotic beasts had consumed a lot of human rations. This eagle beast didn't live directly in the valley. Instead, it had dug a huge cave on a cliff. A gust of wind blew past, and there was a thick rancid smell in the air. Xiao Long, it's your turn. Yang Tian looked at the situation in front of him and guessed that the eagle beast was resting inside the cave. He turned his head and said to Little Azure Dragon, "Squeak, squeak." The little azure dragon, who was eager to fight, cried out excitedly. After a moment, Roar, the little blue dragon, who had transformed into a giant dragon, floated above the eagle's nest and let out a dragon's roar. The roar shook the rocks on the hill. When the four men in black saw the giant dragon that suddenly appeared in the sky, they were shocked and stopped in their tracks. The four of them discussed for a while. One of them immediately returned while the other three continued forward. They had to report everything that happened here to Higula. Screech, after the little blue dragon let out a threatening roar, the eagle beast in the cave finally appeared. It first poked its head out and turned its agile head to look outside. When it raised its head and saw the little blue dragon in the sky, it let out a furious roar. When the eagle beast appeared, it released a powerful aura. Yang Tian could clearly feel that this eagle beast had surpassed a level 10 exotic beast. According to the universe realm, it should be a Star King exotic beast. If one were to judge the exotic beast's strength from its aura, then the little blue dragon would be even more powerful. When it was on Earth, the little blue dragon's strength had already reached the Star King level. Last time, it had swallowed a giant gnome. After digesting it, its level had increased by another level. The eagle beast's feathers were bright red and very shiny. After it poked its head out and let out a roar, it immediately came out of the cave and flapped its wings to fly into the sky. This was a giant beast. When it flew into the sky and spread its wingspan was at least 50 meters. With just a flap of its wings, it would cause a gust of wind that could blow a person away. Screech, when the eagle beast flew into the sky, it once again opened its beak at the little blue dragon in front of it, wanting to let out a threatening roar to the little blue dragon. A battle between exotic beasts was the same as a battle between humans. The first thing to compete was aura. Pung, how could the little blue dragon let it be so arrogant? Before the eagle beast could even finish its roar, the little blue dragon had already slapped the eagle beast's back with its tail, slapping it down from the sky. Rumble, the eagle beast's mountainous body crashed onto the ground, causing a small mountain peak to collapse, causing the earth to tremble and the mountains to shake. Seeing the situation, Yang Tian nodded his head. His judgment was correct. While the eagle beast was powerful and could dominate this planet, in terms of realm, it was one level lower than the little blue dragon. Exotic beasts were the same as human experts. One level lower, and the difference in strength would be very obvious. The reason why the eagle beast was so difficult to deal with was because it could fly. If it could not defeat its enemy, it could escape thousands of miles away. However, the little blue dragon could fly as well, and it was even more agile than when it used its wings to fly. Screech, the eagle beast that crashed onto the ground, let out a miserable cry. Large amounts of red feathers fell from its body and were blown away by the wind. Yang Tian raised his hand and caught one of the red feathers. The feather was as thick as a human's arm and was a few meters long, but it was very light. The root of the feather was connected to a piece of flesh, and the smell of blood filled the air. With just one attack, the little blue dragon had caused the eagle beast to be heavily injured. Seeing the eagle beast that it had slapped down, the little blue dragon did not do what it did in the previous battles. It did not immediately pounce on the eagle beast after striking it down from the sky. In the sky, it swayed its body and waved its four thick claws as it coldly stared at the eagle beast. After the eagle beast fell into the valley, it fluttered a few times and kicked up a cloud of dust. It stood up again, flapped its wings, and flew into the sky once more. This guy was not stupid. It knew that it could not defeat the little blue dragon, so it turned around and left after flying into the sky. Its flight path was actually heading towards the settlement of the Hela tribe. The eagle beast that was flying at a low altitude covered half the sky for the three men in black. When they saw the eagle beast flying over, they immediately fell to the ground, rolled a few times, and hid among the rocks by the mountain path. This action was very familiar, as if it had been practiced for a long time. At this time, the eagle beast only cared about escaping. It did not care about the 3 humans on the ground. It did not even look down and flew over the 3 men in black. Chapter 199. Boom! The little blue dragon appeared in front of the eagle beast like lightning and blocked its way. Then, it opened its mouth and spat out a hot dragon flame. Facing the hot dragon flame that was rapidly approaching, the eagle beast suddenly straightened its body. With a flap of its wings, a whirlwind appeared in front of it. The dragon flame that the little blue dragon spat at it was blocked by this whirlwind, forming a white tornado that rushed into the sky. Seeing this situation, Yang Tian was surprised. This eagle beast was not without trick. In terms of controlling the airflow, it was at a master level. The little blue dragon also had a surprised look in its eyes. After dissolving the dragon flame that the little blue dragon spat out, the eagle beast turned its head again and wanted to escape. This time, its speed was faster than before. Whoosh! What was even more peculiar was that when it turned around, there was suddenly a strong gust of wind, blowing the little azure dragon that was pouncing towards it a few times in the sky. After the little blue dragon stabilized its body, it found that the eagle beast was already more than 50 meters away from it. Roar! The angry little blue dragon let out a low roar. Whoosh! Boom! If fire didn't work, then use electricity. Between the little blue dragon's dragon horns, a strong electric current suddenly appeared. After gathering together, a thick bolt of lightning with a thunderous sound struck the eagle beast. At this moment, the eagle beast's whole body trembled. Its huge body rolled a few times in the air, and with a boom, it fell to the ground again. This time, the little blue dragon would not give the eagle beast a chance to recover. Purring, the little blue dragon swooped down from the sky and pressed the eagle beast's head with its thick claws. The eagle beast's head was pressed into the ground by the little blue dragon's powerful force. Pring pring pring, the eagle beast used its powerful wings to constantly beat the ground, struggling with all its might. The red sand on the ground splashed in all directions, forming a red sand fog. The 3 men in black had already climbed up from the ground and looked at everything in front of them with their mouths agape. Xiao Long, don't dawdle. Kill it. There are still 2 ultra beasts. Yang Tian shouted. Roar! The little blue dragon let out a roar to the sky, then lowered its head and spat dragon flame at the eagle beast. Boom! The sound of an explosion rang out. As soon as the eagle beast's feathers came into contact with the high-temperature dragon flame, it immediately burned, emitting black smoke and the smell of burning fat. Boom boom boom! The eagle beastmen, whose bodies were burned by the fire, flapped their wings in pain. The flames soared, and the sparks were blown all over the sky by the wind. Little Azure Dragon released the eagle beast at the right time. The eagle beast was finally liberated. Like a huge fireball, it flew towards the sky. Boom! The little blue dragon raised its head, opened its mouth, and spat out dragon flame again, adding more flames to the fireball. The eagle beast's body was instantly covered in flames. Screech, screech, screech! In the process of struggling, the eagle beast's painful roar sounded very sad. When the 3 men in black saw the eagle beast being burned and screaming, they did not have any sympathy on their faces. Instead, they clenched their fists and gritted their teeth. They were very excited. In their hearts, this eagle beast had killed countless Hera tribesmen. Even if it died 10,000 times, it would not be enough to atone for its sins. Seeing the eagle beast die in such a painful way made them feel relieved. Yang Tian looked at everything calmly. At this time, he was already thinking about how to deal with the next fire beast, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Speaking of which, the Tyrannosaurus Rex was the most powerful of the 3 ultra beasts. It was just that it could not fly like the eagle beast. If he wanted to kill it, it would be much more difficult than now. Boom! Just as Yang Tian was thinking, the eagle beast, whose feathers were all burned, fell from the sky. Screech! The eagle beast that had lost its feathers looked much smaller than before. At this time, it was still not dead. After it fell to the ground, it was still letting out a low cry. Looking at the situation, the eagle beast was already at the end of its tether. It would not be long before it died. Yang Tian strode down the hill, and passed by the 3 men in black who were watching the battle. At this time, the 3 men in black were still staring at the eagle beast that had lost its feathers and was trembling. "It's your turn." When he passed by the 3, Yang Tian said calmly. When they heard Yang Tian's voice, the 3 of them came back to their senses. At this time, the little blue dragon had already flown into the sky. Its body quickly shrunk, and in a few blinks of an eye, it turned back into a mini dragon and landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. The 3 men in black focused all their attention on the eagle beast. They pulled out the black short swords from their waists, looked at each other, and pounced at the eagle beast. Yang Tian walked back the way he came without looking back. Behind him, there were continuous sounds of chopping and cutting, mixed with the weak cries of the eagle beast. Yang Tian left the mountain area, turned around, and headed southwest. His next target, the T-Rex. An hour later. He killed the berserk beast? Higula, who had received the report from his subordinate, said in surprise. His face was filled with disbelief. This eagle beast was the most difficult exotic beast to deal with for the Higula tribe. One of the men in black nodded and said, "He has a mystical exotic beast with him. It has no wings, but it can fly. It can change its size." That person did not even make a move, and the eagle beast was killed by his exotic beast. The man in black who spoke was covered in blood. Although he and the other 2 killed the eagle beast in the end, they were not arrogant enough to say that they killed the eagle beast. Hearing his subordinate's words, Higula laughed. He twirled his hair in front of his chest and said calmly, "I want to see the next exotic beast personally." While walking, Yang Tian had made up his mind. He turned around and said to the little blue dragon with a smile, "Xiao Long, let me deal with the next T-Rex." Yang Tian was full of confidence when he said that. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The little blue dragon was a little dissatisfied. It had not enjoyed the previous battle to its heart's content. Yang Tian looked at the terrain in front of him and said with a smile, "There will be plenty of opportunities to fight in the future. I feel like I haven't fought in a long time. It's time for me to practice." The area where the T-Rex was located was similar to the grasslands on Earth. This area was filled with red plants, and many herbivorous exotic beasts lived there. When Yang Tian entered this area, he startled many strange-looking exotic beasts as he walked. Some of these exotic beasts looked like snakes, while others looked like huge frogs. They could jump, but had fur on their bodies. Their mouths were sharper than the frogs on Earth. There were also some that looked like ostriches, herbivorous exotic beasts that could not fly. Other than the exotic beasts, there were also many insects. Each of them was bigger than a fist. When Yang Tian walked past them, they kept flapping around in the grass. Some of them even made gg sounds. Yang Tian only felt the vitality when he arrived here, and his mood was much better. Chapter 200. It was full of life, yet full of danger. If an ordinary person without any martial arts came here, they would probably be eaten by the exotic beasts before long. However, an expert like Yang Tian didn't have to worry about that. The aura they were emitting was enough to scare away most of the exotic beasts. The other exotic beasts wouldn't dare to attack them casually, either. Seeing all kinds of animals on the ground, Yang Tian was a little confused. There was plenty of food here, so why was the Tyrannosaurus lacking food? However, he soon understood the reason. Boom, boom, boom. After Yang Tian advanced another few dozen li, the sound of something huge moving could be heard ahead of him. The commotion was truly too great. At the same time, Yang Tian also felt a powerful aura. A few kilometers ahead, a huge Tyrannosaurus Rex appeared in Yang Tian's sight. This was a flat area, and he could see very far with a single glance. When this huge Tyrannosaurus Rex moved, it caused a huge commotion. Adding the aura it was emitting, any creature it could eat would run far away from it. It wasn't a herbivore and couldn't eat grass. As such, no matter how powerful it wasn't able to hunt enough exotic beasts. It would probably be hungry most of the time. Such a huge exotic beast would have a shocking appetite every day. It would probably have to eat a few thousand gene of meat in one go before it was satisfied, seeing that there wasn't a single huge exotic beast around this huge Tyrannosaurus Rex, and that fellow was still chasing a sheep-like exotic beast that was less than 3 meters long. Yang Tian truly felt sorry for this fellow. Sometimes being too big wasn't a good thing. Yang Tian watched from afar. That huge Tyrannosaurus Rex chased that tiny exotic beast for about 10 minutes, and in the end, it had to use its fire breath to kill it. For the huge Tyrannosaurus Rex, such a tiny exotic beast wasn't even enough to fill its teeth. When it raised its head and looked around, there was silence everywhere. The other exotic beasts had long run far away. The huge Tyrannosaurus Rex suddenly raised its head and let out an unwilling and angry roar. Tyrannosaurus Rex was several kilometers away from Yang Tian. When the T-Rex turned around and walked away, Yang Tian put down his backpack and pulled out his knife. Looking at the knife in his hand, Yang Tian didn't know if this knife could hurt this huge Tyrannosaurus Rex. If it couldn't, he could only use his fists or dragon claws. Creak, creak, the little blue dragon, who was lying on Yang Tian's shoulder, saw that Yang Tian was full of fighting spirit and roared twice unwillingly. Yang Tian chuckled before rushing toward the Tyrannosaurus Rex. At this time, not far away, the priest of the Hela tribe, Higula, was surrounded by a group of guards. He stared at Yang Tian without blinking. Yang Tian had already sensed that someone was coming, but he didn't look at Higula. To Yang Tian, who was running at full speed, a distance of several kilometers was only a matter of minutes. In Higula's eyes, Yang Tian was moving at an incredible speed. The Tyrannosaurus Rex had also sensed Yang Tian's approach. To it, there was a belly full of anger that it had yet to vent. When it sensed Yang Tian, it quickly turned around. When it saw Yang Tian, it opened its mouth and spat out a red flame at Yang Tian. The temperature of this flame was much lower compared to the little blue dragon's dragon flames. But Yang Tian still quickly dodged it and instantly arrived under the Tyrannosaurus Rex's belly. Yang Tian used all his strength and stabbed the knife into the Tyrannosaurus Rex's belly. The knife went in, but it was met with a strong resistance. The pain in its belly caused the Tyrannosaurus Rex to let out a roar. It bent its 2 hind legs and pressed its huge body toward Yang Tian. Yang Tian immediately pulled out his knife and dodged again. Boom! The Tyrannosaurus Rex's huge body slammed into the ground, creating a large crater in the hard and dry ground. The ground within a few miles shook. To the Tyrannosaurus Rex, its thick skin, powerful strength, and the flames that it spat out were all weapons that it could use. It also knew how to use these advantages of its own. When Yang Tian dodged, the Tyrannosaurus Rex did not stand up. It was still lying on the ground. But it turned its head, opened its mouth, and spat out flames at him again. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was huge, and the red flames that it spat out covered a large area. Yang Tian had no choice but to dodge again. Seeing that Yang Tian had dodged, the Tyrannosaurus Rex straightened its body and used one of its thick legs to stomp on Yang Tian. Boom! There was a loud noise. The Tyrannosaurus Rex stomped another deep crater into the hard ground. Yang Tian had already dodged and leaped high into the air. He used his left hand to grab onto the wrinkled skin of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's waist. Then, he exerted some force and landed on the Tyrannosaurus Rex's back. At this time, the Tyrannosaurus Rex had yet to react. Yang Tian quickly took a few steps forward and leaped high into the air again. Holding the knife with both hands, he aimed the tip of the knife at the Tyrannosaurus Rex's neck and plunged it down. This time, Yang Tian used the technique of the snow cleaver. During the plunge, his hands did not tremble at all. He did his best to minimize the contact area between the tip of the knife and the Tyrannosaurus Rex's skin. Yang Tian's knife plunged into the area between the Tyrannosaurus Rex's neck and back. The knife, which was more than a meter long, sank halfway into the Tyrannosaurus Rex's back. Pung! When the knife ran out of strength, Yang Tian released his hands, raised his right hand, and slapped the hilt of the knife. This slap directly pushed the entire blade into the Tyrannosaurus Rex's body, leaving only the hilt exposed. Roar! Although the Tyrannosaurus Rex was very big and had very thick skin, and this strike would not be able to cause any fatal damage to it, the pain was unavoidable. The Tyrannosaurus Rex howled in pain, and the skin on its back trembled. Yang Tian did not expect that the Tyrannosaurus Rex's thick, rock-like skin could actually move. Caught off guard, he staggered and almost fell. Fortunately, Yang Tian's strength was very strong, and his lower body was very stable. He lowered his center of gravity and steadied himself. At this time, the Tyrannosaurus Rex turned its head and opened its mouth. Yang Tian knew that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was going to spit fire at him again. He kicked his legs and flew away. Boom! A hot flame brushed past Yang Tian's body. Yang Tian flipped a few times in the air and landed firmly on the ground. While Yang Tian was fighting with the Tyrannosaurus Rex, Higula had been quickly approaching them. She wanted to see more clearly. In her eyes, Yang Tian was very fast and very strong. She could not believe that he was able to stab her weapon into the body of the fire beast. What she did not know was that until now, Yang Tian had only been using his physical strength to fight. He had not used the power of the Dragon Ball. This was also a way for Yang Tian to test himself. He also wanted to see if he could defeat the Tyrannosaurus Rex without using the power of the Dragon Ball. The answer was yes, but it would take a long time. Chapter 201. There were people watching from the side. Yang Tian didn't want to disappoint them and make them look down on him. Yang Tian knew that on a foreign planet, only by displaying great power would he be able to make the people here respect him. Only then would he be able to easily obtain what he wanted. This was also the unchanging law of this universe. The strong were respected. The power of the dragon orb in his body circulated. Yang Tian's body suddenly erupted with a powerful aura. Roar! Stimulated by Yang Tian's aura, the Tyrannosaurus Rex raised its head and roared. The real battle was about to begin. Yang Tian's aura could be felt from far away. Although she was a full kilometer away from Yang Tian, Higula could still feel the power that suddenly erupted from Yang Tian's body. This power was too strong for her. Looking at Yang Tian's small figure from afar, Higula's eyes narrowed slightly. Her eyes were filled with desire. The plan that had been hidden in her heart for a long time seemed to be about to be realized. Back on Earth, the little blue dragon and Yang Tian had split the dragon orb, causing Yang Tian's strength to surpass the realm of a Star-Lord of the Starfall Star Realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill Zi Chen and Ji Wei so easily. Although that level of strength was only temporary, after coming to planet Crimson Flame, Yang Tian had once again absorbed a large amount of energy from the stellar crystals. When using the power of the dragon orb, his strength could already be maintained at the peak of a Star-Lord of the Starfall Star Realm. And this Tyrannosaurus Rex in front of him was at most a Star-Lord of the Starfall Star Realm. The difference between the two of them was an entire level. Pung! Pung! Looking at this tiny human in front of it, the huge Tyrannosaurus Rex actually took 2 steps back. However, it quickly stopped. After all, it was also an overlord. How could it be afraid of this tiny human? The power of the dragon orb flowed rapidly in Yang Tian's body, making his skin and flesh extremely tough. His strength was also at the peak of a Star-Lord of the Starfall Star Realm. Yang Tian made the first move, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex took 2 steps back before suddenly coming to a stop. Yang Tian's figure flashed, and he suddenly appeared in the air. It was as if he had teleported, and he was right above the Overlord's head. Yang Tian punched out again and again. Pung! A thunderous sound rang out. The tyrant dragon's massive head was knocked to the side by Yang Tian's punch. Boom! Boom! The Tyrannosaurus Rex stumbled back another 2 steps from the sheer force of the impact. The strength of this punch was at least tens of thousands of pounds. Yang Tian used the recoil force from the punch to twist his waist and spin in the air before landing on the back of the T-Rex. At Yang Tian's feet was a saber with only the hilt remaining. Pung! Yang Tian punched again. He leaned over and punched the saber hilt. Pung! Poof! The saber hilt, made of light alloy, was shattered by Yang Tian's punch. The hiltless saber penetrated the Tyrannosaurus Rex's neck and sank into the ground. Roar! The saber penetrated its neck and almost pierced its heart. The Tyrannosaurus Rex howled in pain, turned its head, and opened its mouth. Just as it was about to spit fire, it found that Yang Tian was no longer on its back. Yang Tian flashed and appeared behind the Tyrannosaurus Rex's neck. Pung! Yang Tian punched the Tyrannosaurus Rex's neck again. The Tyrannosaurus Rex's neck tilted to the side, but it quickly shook its head. Pung! Poof! Yang Tian didn't have time to dodge, and his body was hit by the Tyrannosaurus Rex's head. His body was like a stone that had been smashed into the ground, and his body sank deep into the earth. But then, with a purring, the ground exploded. Yang Tian used his powerful strength to lift the surrounding soil, and he shot out from the ground, flying dozens of meters in the air. Although the Tyrannosaurus Rex's body was huge, it wasn't clumsy. When Yang Tian shot out from the ground, while his body was still in the air, the Tyrannosaurus Rex opened its mouth and spat out red flames at Yang Tian. The temperature of the flames was very high, reaching at least 1,000 degrees. Although Yang Tian would not suffer any fatal injuries after being burned for a short period of time by the flames of this temperature, his clothes and hair would most likely be destroyed. Yang Tian didn't want to become a black man. You have fire, so do I. Yang Tian looked at the red flames coming at him and laughed coldly in his heart. Then, he punched the air. Poof! Yang Tian's punch hit the air, and a powerful force flowed through his arm. The air in front of his fist was disturbed, forming a vortex of air. Yang Tian's realm had already reached the level of a Star Lord. In fact, when one reached the level of a Star Lord, the power in their body could be released to hurt the enemy. Yang Tian's powerful Dragon Ball power, once released, was so powerful that even he felt that it was inconceivable, because the vortex of air in front of his fist actually sucked in all the red flames spat out by the Tyrannosaurus Rex. At the same time, the temperature of the flames rapidly increased. In an instant, the flame, which was about to turn white, was swept back into the Tyrannosaurus Rex's mouth by the airflow. Purring! The Tyrannosaurus Rex wanted to close its mouth, but it was too late. When it closed its mouth, the flames rushed into its mouth and exploded, like an incendiary bomb exploding in its mouth. During this process, Yang Tian heard a sizzling sound. The one who played with fire burned himself. Was this what it meant? When Yang Tian landed on the ground, green smoke came out of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's mouth, and a burnt smell could be smelled in the air. Roar! The Tyrannosaurus Rex opened its mouth in pain and let out a hoarse cry. Compared to the sound before, this cry was much weaker. Yang Tian injured the Tyrannosaurus Rex twice in an instant. But these 2 injuries were not fatal. Because of the pain, the Tyrannosaurus Rex's bestial nature was aroused, making it even more ferocious. After a roar, the Tyrannosaurus Rex stared at Yang Tian angrily. Suddenly, it turned its body and swept its thick tail towards Yang Tian. Whoosh! A whistling sound rang out. The Tyrannosaurus Rex swept its tail, creating a rapid airflow. Its speed was very fast, but it was not faster than Yang Tian. Yang Tian disappeared from the spot as if he had teleported, and once again appeared above the Tyrannosaurus Rex's head and punched between the Tyrannosaurus Rex's eyes. Bang! This punch was the same as the previous one, and it was equally powerful. Before the Tyrannosaurus Rex could complete its tail sweep, its head was knocked to the side by Yang Tian's attack. It lost its balance and fell to the ground, causing the ground to tremble. This was the first time that He Gu and her guards had seen Yang Tian fight the Tyrannosaurus Rex with brute force. They did not expect that a human could be so strong. At this moment, He Gu and her guards were all dumbfounded. "It's time to end this," Yang Tian mumbled as he looked at the Tyrannosaurus Rex that had fallen to the ground. The Tyrannosaurus Rex had a very big weakness, and that was that its two front claws were too short. Once it fell to the ground, it would not be able to get up for a long time. Of course, Yang Tian would not let go of this opportunity. Bang! 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 Just as the giant Tyrannosaurus Rex was about to use its tail as support to stand up, Yang Tian had already appeared in front of its head. Yang Tian punched one of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's eyes. The Tyrannosaurus Rex's eyes were also its weakness. With his powerful strength, Yang Tian's fist easily pierced through the Tyrannosaurus Rex's eyeball. His entire arm went in. This punch, Yang Tian had also unleashed the powerful power of the Dragon Ball. When this punch pierced through the Tyrannosaurus Rex's eye, the power of the Dragon Ball, along with the power of the Dragon Ball and the power of electricity, began to wreak havoc in the Tyrannosaurus Rex's head. Yang Tian pulled out his fist. Then, Yang Tian turned around and walked towards the place where he had left his backpack. Because this Tyrannosaurus Rex was dead meat. Bang! 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 The Tyrannosaurus Rex behind Yang Tian was making its final struggle. Its thick tail slapped the ground, sending up red sand and dust. A gust of wind blew, and the sand and dust covered Yang Tian's figure. When the sand and dust dissipated, Yang Tian was nowhere to be seen. Seeing this, He Gu immediately turned around and said to the guards, "Go to the gravel beast. He must have gone there." Chapter 202. He Gula was right. Yang Tian had already gone to the gravel beast's location. The eagle beast's nest was in the mountains because it could fly. Other beasts with large bodies would find it difficult to move around here. To it, the mountains were the best place to build its nest. Tyrannosaurus Rex's body was huge and needed speed to hunt. That was why it chose a flat area with hard soil. As for the gravel beast, it liked to move around underground. Naturally, it liked places with soft soil. 2 hours later, Yang Tian, who was moving quickly, had already arrived at a place that looked like a desert. This area had a radius of tens of miles, and it was all low sand dunes. When the wind blew, the red sand would fill the air. The gravel beast lived in this desert. After the wind blew away the red sand, he could see a lot of beast bones. Yang Tian walked in this desert. With his sharp senses, Yang Tian had already noticed that the gravel beast was approaching. Yang Tian put down his backpack, turned around, and said to the little blue dragon on his shoulder, "Xiao Long, how about I let you have this gravel beast?" Squeak, squeak, squeak. The little blue dragon shook its head, indicating that it was not interested. To the little blue dragon, this gravel beast was too weak. It did not even have the desire to fight. Purring, as soon as the little blue dragon's voice fell, a pile of sand beside Yang Tian exploded. A huge head came out from the sand. This was the gravel beast that the He-La people talked about. In an instant, Yang Tian saw the gravel beast's appearance clearly. It was actually a big bug. It had a red, shiny, flat, round head. This gravel beast also had a pair of pincers. When it came out from the ground, it immediately opened its pincers and bit towards Yang Tian. This was also one of its hunting methods. It would bite its prey and instantly drag it into the sand. It could suffocate its prey to death, or it could just directly bite its prey to death. Yang Tian, who was already prepared, jumped up when the gravel beast bit him. He dodged the gravel beast's bite and threw out a punch. Purring! Yang Tian's fist directly landed on the gravel beast's flat and round head, emitting a dull and loud sound. Yang Tian did not want to dawdle with this gravel beast. This was the weakest of the three strange beasts, and also the most troublesome one. If he couldn't kill it in one hit and let it burrow into the ground, it would be very troublesome to kill it later. Therefore, Yang Tian used his greatest strength. Moreover, when the fist came into contact with the gravel beast's head, the powerful Dragon Ball's power flowed along Yang Tian's fist and forcefully poured into the gravel beast's head. After the little blue dragon and Yang Tian split, the power of Yang Tian's dragon orb contained the attributes of lightning and fire. Its destructive power was astonishing. After the punch, Yang Tian landed on the ground, and just like before, he turned around and left. Purring! The gravel beast behind him didn't even have the chance to struggle. The small part of its body that was exposed above the sand suddenly became soft, and its huge head fell onto the sand. Puff! Puff! Yang Tian picked up his backpack, patted the sand off it, slung it over his shoulder, and walked back the way he came. He-Gu-La had just arrived, and this was the scene that she saw. The three strange beasts that were the biggest threat to the He-Gu-La tribe were killed by Yang Tian and the little blue dragon, just like that. In the whistling sound of the wind, Yang Tian's figure in He-Gu-La's mind was getting taller and taller. When Yang Tian came in front of He-Gu-La and the others, He-Gu-La and her guards bowed to Yang Tian. These people's gratitude towards Yang Tian came from the bottom of their hearts. Yang Tian's expression was calm. He looked at He-Gu-La, who was fully dressed, and said calmly, "My promise has been fulfilled. I need to get what I want." He-Gu-La smiled and said, "Don't worry. You can get what you want, and even more." Yang Tian nodded. Under He-Gu-La's lead, Yang Tian returned to the residential area of the He-Gu-La tribe's nobles. Here, He-Gu-La had wanted to arrange a grand banquet for Yang Tian, but she was rejected by Yang Tian. He didn't like crowds. The place that He-Gu-La had arranged for Yang Tian to stay was the stone castle that she was in. On this planet there was only day and no night. When one wanted to sleep, all they had to do was cover all the windows with black animal skins. Then, they could sleep peacefully. A stone castle like this had a strong soundproof effect, and it was very quiet. Also, it was very cool. Yang Tian was indeed tired. He hadn't slept for more than 100 hours, and he really wanted to rest. In He-Gu-La's spacious room, other than a huge bonfire, there was also a pool about 7 to 8 meters wide and 1 meter deep in a place where the light from the fire couldn't reach. He didn't know where the water came from, but it was clear and transparent. Yang Tian put his hand into the pool. The water was warm. Taking advantage of the fact that He-Gu-La was outside and there was no one here, Yang Tian quickly took off all his clothes and jumped into the pool. The little azure dragon squeaked excitedly as well, then jumped into the pool and swam happily in the water. After washing himself clean, Yang Tian still couldn't bear to get out of the pool. He leaned against the side of the pool and slowly closed his eyes. After the little blue dragon was done swimming in the water, it jumped onto Yang Tian's shoulder and closed its eyes in satisfaction. Under the dim light of the fire, Yang Tian's body emitted a bronze glow, giving off a strong and powerful feeling. After a while, light footsteps could be heard at the door. When Yang Tian heard this, he knew that He-Gu-La had come in. Without saying anything, he jumped into the pool to take a bath. He didn't know if this pool water was normal drinking water. Yang Tian felt a little embarrassed and awkward. But if he got up now, He-Gu-La would see him, so Yang Tian could only pretend that he didn't know. The footsteps got closer and closer, and then there was a splash. Yang Tian opened his eyes and saw He Gu La jumping into the water naked. Under the dim light, although he couldn't see clearly, there was something special about him. The pool water rippled, and the waves tickled Yang Tian's chest, making Yang Tian feel itchy. But after He Gu La entered the pool, Yang Tian didn't have to worry about the pool water anymore. It turned out that this pool really was He Gu La's bath. The sound of water splashing could be heard. He Gu La sat in the pool, holding a wooden ladle and washing his body. After more than 10 minutes, when He Gu La finished washing his body, he suddenly stood up from the pool. The pool water wasn't deep, just above He Gu La's thighs. Although the light was dim, Yang Tian still felt thirsty after seeing it. In order to calm himself down, Yang Tian closed his eyes again. He Gu La came in front of Yang Tian and leaned against Yang Tian's side. He reached out and stroked Yang Tian's chest, saying lightly, "The person you're looking for is called Qin Jingyang. I didn't expect him to be the one who wanted to steal the key to the underground palace. After he was caught by us, he suffered a lot." When he heard the news about his grandfather, Yang Tian calmed down immediately. He turned his head and looked at He Gu La, who was leaning against him. He asked, "Where is he?" He Gu La smiled. "Don't worry, we've already let him go. He's also very powerful. Which exiled planet did you come here from? It seems like everyone here is a strong person. In the past 100 years, there have been at least 100 people like you who have come. Where are they?" Yang Tian asked after He Gu La finished speaking. With a splash, He Gu La flipped over and sat on top of Yang Tian. He smiled. More than half of them entered the underground palace. Some stayed behind and joined our tribe. Yang Tian immediately pushed He Gu La away, stood up, and walked out of the pool. He took out a towel from his bag, dried himself, and changed into clean clothes. Yang Tian's movements were very fast. It didn't even take him a minute. The little blue dragon beside him kept looking at Yang Tian with a smile. It seemed like he found Yang Tian's awkwardness very interesting. After putting on his clothes, Yang Tian finally heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't want to have anything to do with He Gu La. Just now, he had almost accidentally gotten into a fight with He Gu La. Yang Tian didn't want to be controlled by his own desires. A strong person needed a strong will no matter what they did. He Gu La looked at Yang Tian with resentment. After Yang Tian put on his clothes, he said with some dissatisfaction, "Do you think that I'm a very casual woman?" Yang Tian smiled. "I don't know. This has nothing to do with me." He Gu La frowned. He was obviously dissatisfied with Yang Tian's answer. However, he quickly adjusted his state of mind and said lightly, "I need your help to leave this place." "Leave?" Yang Tian turned around and looked at He Gu La with some surprise. He Gu La said, "I've been here for more than 100 years. If I wasn't forced to, who would want to stay on such a planet? The planet I was originally on was much more prosperous than this one. It's all my fault. I came here out of curiosity." After listening to He Gu La's explanation, Yang Tian found out that He Gu La also came from an exile planet. However, looking at He Gu La's appearance, she didn't look like an old woman who was more than 100 years old. Under the dim light, He Gu La saw Yang Tian's eyes and smiled. "I know that if you want to get benefits you have to pay a price. Of course, the price I'm talking about isn't my body, but..." At this point, He Gu La stopped. However, she had successfully piqued Yang Tian's curiosity. "What price?" Yang Tian asked curiously. He Gu La smiled and said, "The power that we cultivate on that exiled planet is completely different from yours. We use this place..." He Gu La pointed at his own head and said, "Our thoughts can turn into power to control everything. If you agree to take me away from here, I can help you gain such power." "Mind power?" Yang Tian was surprised. Wasn't the power He Gu La was talking about the mind power humans on Earth talked about? "How about it?" Are you satisfied with this price? He-Gu La saw Yang Tian's expression and knew that Yang Tian was very interested in this. Yang Tian nodded. To Yang Tian, having another type of power was a great thing. Chapter 203. The temperature outside was very high, as if it was summer. However, the temperature in the castle was very low. Even if there was a big fire, it would still be around 10 degrees Celsius. After putting on his clothes, Yang Tian sat on the wooden stool that He-Gu La used to rest. The stool was very big, almost the size of a bed. It was covered with soft fur. After sitting on it, Yang Tian could not help but lie down and close his eyes. He had not rested for a long time. At this moment, there was a splash of water. He-Gu La stood up from the pool. Yang Tian, who was using his hands as a pillow, could not help but open his eyes to take a look. Under the dim light, he could only see He-Gu La's figure. Although it was not very clear, He-Gu La's curves were very perfect. At this moment, 2 maids came over with He-Gu La's clothes. They quickly helped He-Gu La put them on. The clothes were very simple. He-Gu La's upper body and waist were wrapped in white beast skin. Then, he put on a cloak made of beast fur. On this planet there were not many resources. The most expensive clothes that the rich wore were made of beast fur. It looked very different from the silk products made by humans on Earth. He-Gu La did not give up on teasing Yang Tian. After putting on the clothes, she lay down beside Yang Tian. Ji, the little blue dragon, who was lying beside Yang Tian, cried out in dissatisfaction. Seeing the little blue dragon's ferocious look, He-Gu La could only stay away from Yang Tian. Although she had not seen it with her own eyes, she heard from her subordinates that Yang Tian's beast could transform into a giant dragon. Even eagle beasts were not its match. He-Gu La did not want to anger the little blue dragon. My name was not originally He-Gu La. The first 2 words in my name were Chu Yen. It means the smoke that rises when there is no wind, like Yang Tian. He-Gu La placed his hands behind his head and looked at the dark ceiling of the stone fortress as he spoke. So He-Gu La's original name was Chu Yen Guing. What a strange name! Yang Tian sensed the faint aroma from He-Gu La's body. Hearing He-Gu La's story, Yang Tian felt very comfortable. He-Gu La's original planet was called Ipa. This was the name that Yang Tian had translated. Ipa should be slightly larger than Earth. Half of it was land, half of it was ocean, and there were many island countries. The total population of the entire planet was estimated to be in the billions. Unlike Earth, the human society on this planet was still in the stage of a slave society, and technology was not developed. However, on this planet, the spiritual power of every human was very strong. Their average lifespan was about 500 years, which was more than 5 times longer than the human lifespan on Earth. He-Gu La was only around 190 years old, which was equivalent to a human in their mid-20s. He-Gu La was a once-in-a-century genius on Ipa. Before he was 100 years old, he had already become one of the strongest warriors on the planet. In order to pursue a higher level of spiritual power, he had used a disc array to come here. Due to the special energy environment on Ipa, He-Gu La wasn't able to adapt to it as quickly as other powerful beings who came from other planets. He-Gu La had entered the underground palace 3 times, but had failed each time. The last time, she had almost died. What made her discouraged was that she had not even passed the first level of the underground palace. Having lost her confidence, He-Gu La could only stay on this planet and use her spiritual power to help the Hela people fend off the attacks of the mutated beasts. She had also changed her name to He-Gu La, speaking of which, He-Gu La had contributed greatly to the current city of the Hela people. However, Yang Tian was able to guess from He-Gu La's words that those 3 ultra beasts were likely nurtured by He-Gu La on purpose. That was because she needed status, only then would she be able to lead a better life in the Hela tribe. At the same time, Higula could also use these 3 mutated beasts to select the strongest warriors who could pass through the underground palace. Yang Tian, I've been here for almost 100 years. I can't maintain my mental power for long, so I need someone to attach myself to. This is also a choice that powerhouses from planet Ipa must make after leaving planet Ipa. Just like our ancestors who were sent to Ipa. In the end, Higula turned sideways and stared at Yang Tian as she spoke in a pleading tone. Although Yang Tian's eyes were closed, he was not asleep. When Higula said this, he could not help but open his eyes. Higuela's pretty face was so close that a strand of her orange hair fell on Yang Tian's face. Right now, Higuela's eyes were filled with hope. Yang Tian looked at Higuela's watery eyes calmly. He would not be moved by Higuela's story and agree casually. He did not know why, but ever since he passed the test in front of the crystal tablet and engraved his name on it, Yang Tian's heart seemed to have evolved. Nothing in the outside world could cause him to have unnecessary emotional fluctuations, unless he wanted to. Everyone on this planet had a lot of stories to tell. Higula was not the only one. Seeing that Yang Tian's eyes did not waver, Higula felt helpless. The man before her was really difficult to fathom. Any man who could be seen through by a woman would be controlled by a woman, but Yang Tian was an exception. However, Higula did not give up. She parted her lips slightly and moved closer to Yang Tian. All right. I promise you. When Higula's red lips were about to touch Yang Tian suddenly spoke. Higula gave Yang Tian's lips a peck before he lifted his head. This is my first time. Having achieved her goal, Higula turned over and laid down again. Her face was full of joy as she said this. Higula did not go overboard. Yang Tian closed his eyes again and soon started snoring softly. Yang Tian fell asleep, but the little blue dragon opened its eyes wide and looked at Higula cautiously. When Higula saw the little blue dragon's gaze, she smiled helplessly and closed her eyes as well. After resting for about 5 hours, Yang Tian woke up. At this time, Higula was no longer by his side. Your clothes have been washed and dried. When Yang Tian sat up, one of Higula's maidservants came over with a wooden tray and bowed to Yang Tian. On the wooden tray were the dirty clothes that Yang Tian had thrown by the side of the pool. They were now neatly folded together. Thank you. Yang Tian thanked her, grabbed his clothes, and stuffed them into his backpack. At this time, Higula appeared and said to Yang Tian with a smile, "The person you are looking for is here." Seeing Higula now, Yang Tian's eyes widened involuntarily. This was because Higula had already put on a set of fiery red armor and held a gorgeous blue staff in her hand. He did not know what this staff was made of, but it was sparkling and shining, emitting a faint red glow. The top of the cane was diamond-shaped, with an egg-sized ruby inlaid in the middle. It was emitting a faint red light. The armor on Higula's body was very exquisite. It was covered with decorative patterns, and when Higula wore it, she looked even slimmer and more sexy. She was like a beauty that had walked out of a game world. Yang Tian felt that Higula, who was wearing this armor, should be called Chu Yen Guing. The name, Higula, sounded very old-fashioned, and it sounded like the name of a witch. It was obviously not suitable for her now. Chu Yen Guing, where is she? Yang Tian asked after being stunned for a moment. Compared to Higula's attire, Yang Tian was more concerned about Qin Lao. Little Tian. As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, Qin Lao's voice sounded from the door. Grandpa! Yang Tian called out happily when he heard this familiar voice. Qin Jingyang strode in and appeared in front of Yang Tian. Compared to before, Qin Jingyang was much cleaner. His long hair was cut short, and he was wearing clothes made of beast fur. It made him look even more heroic. Compared to when he was on Earth, Qin Jingyang was much younger. Grandpa Yang Tian couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Qin Jingyang, who had become much younger. Little Tian, Grandpa has become younger. Don't you recognize me? Qin Jingyang looked at Yang Tian and smiled. Yang Tian chuckled and scratched his head. Both of you, please sit down and talk. He Gu La, who was at the side, said with a smile when she saw how familiar Yang Tian and Qin Jingyang were. She didn't understand Yang Tian and Qin Jingyang's conversation. Naturally, she didn't know that Qin Jingyang was Yang Tian's elder. She thought that they were very good friends. Qin Jingyang glanced at He Gu La and turned his head away in embarrassment. Previously, he had been caught at He Gu La's place. Now that he didn't see He Gu La, he felt a little ashamed. As a man, he actually fell into a woman's trap. He was too embarrassed to tell anyone. Two maids quickly brought tea over. Yang Tian and Qin Jingyang sat on a small wooden stool next to the fire. They chatted while drinking tea. Little Tian, do you know where Little Fei is? Qin Jingyang immediately asked after telling Ling Yun about his encounter. Yang Tian nodded and frowned. Little Fei is the princess of the Lan Qin Empire. This news should be true. Yang Tian quickly told Qin Jingyang about what happened after Qin Jingyang left. Grandpa, Little Fei should be fine. You don't have to worry. We can set off immediately. Just as Yang Tian said this, Qin Jingyang raised his hand. What's wrong, Grandpa? Yang Tian was puzzled. He didn't know why his grandpa interrupted him. Qin Jingyang hesitated for a moment before saying, I want to stay and look for your grandmother. Grandmother? That was Qin Jingyang's wife. What's going on? Yang Tian was shocked. He always thought that Qin Lao's wife had passed away. Qin Jingyang smiled bitterly. Actually, your grandmother is still alive. She came here a long time ago. Our relationship wasn't very good. I've always told your Uncle Qin that his mother had passed away. Not long after I came here, one day, I saw a familiar figure. I saw the tattoo behind her neck. This is too similar. I'm 100% sure that's my wife. So, I want to stay and look for her. He didn't expect there to be such a past. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.